Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the astrology of July 2026. Hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon out there. We're getting close to the summer solstice as I'm recording this today on June 19th. And we're going to be going over all of the astrological lunations, ingresses of new planets into new signs, solar phases, out of bounds planets. We're going to prepare you for the month ahead. We're going to do an I-Ching and an animal today as well, just to kind of see what the communication from the divine is bringing us. So if you are here and joining me today, drop me a comment in the chat. I would love to see you. And let me know where you're stopping in from. It's always nice to see smiling faces in the chat and hear where you're coming from. And it's beautiful to create that kind of community here. So a couple announcements before we dive in. We're going to be buckling in for a couple hours. So no rush, no hurry. Get yourself a good glass of water, a good drink, good snack. You know, take your headphones, go out in your garden, whatever it is that you're doing today. We're just going to be spending some time together. So welcome, friends. Astrology of July 2026 today. A couple things. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com, where I am doing all sorts of different offerings, where I'm doing all sorts of different readings. I have a number of different selections. Of course, you can schedule a Mythos natal reading, which is sort of a flagship reading, where we take 2 hours and we go over all the different ins and outs of your chart. We look at your natal story. If there's some things, some repetitive cycles that have been going on in your life, like understanding them is really important, whether they're problems or whether they're blessings. So being able to lean into the blessings and be able to mitigate some of the challenges is always a good way to be. So check that out. I also do transit readings. It's called Kairos, which is sort of the relationship to the opportune moment. That's what Kairos means in Greek. So Kairos reading is where we're taking a look at the coming months ahead and preparing you for the types of astrology that might be coming your way so you can make better choices in the moment. I have a quarterly check-in package for that as well. You can also ask a specific question or one specific issue that is a little bit of a shorter session if you have just one thing that you're trying to work through, and we'll look through all of our different methods to find the solution to our challenges. And then you can do a Sun, Moon, Rising, Big 3 Trinity mini reading if you want an introduction to your chart. And then I also do tutoring sessions. So I love teaching astrology. So if you're interested in this work and you're finding that you like my teaching style, or if there's something that you specific that you want to learn about the tarot, traditional astrology, symbolism of all forms, oracular divination, I love to tutor. I love to be an accountability partner and a curriculum setter. So those are all things that I really enjoy doing, and I enjoy working one-on-one with you as well. So check that out, friends, at the Book Now button at spencermichaud.com. You can also visit the store where I have pre-recorded webinars. You can find my Decan series that I did on the 36 Decans, where we go over all sorts of different mythology, tarot symbolism, planetary dignities, etc. Just a big deep dive into with the Decans as a central framing device. You can also find a series I did with my partner Tanya Andrews called Dignity and Devotion, which is where we dive into the 7 traditional planets and where we are kind of looking at them through the lens of astrological magic, but also through the lens of the dignities and where a planet is placed, and if it's well situated or if it's challenged, and how do we work through that? How do we work through that through our devotional practices? How do we work through that through astrological magic? All of those things you can find in that Dignity and Devotion series. Speaking of Tanya Andrews, she has a wonderful business called Third Coast Mojo, which you can find on Etsy. And she has all sorts of wonderful offerings here, including Dragon's Blood, which is a classic conjure formula with exalted Mars and Taurus. Tanya does a really interesting thing. She's combining classic conjure and in the hoodoo tradition with astrological magic and electing planetary magic, and combining those things is very powerful. So check that out. Dragon's Blood, great for protection. She's got the Lion's Light, Sun, and Leo election, all sorts of cool things from the Leo election that she did recently. If you're trying to garner positive attention. Scientific Method is a Saturn and Aquarius conjure oil, which was made when Saturn was in its own domicile of Aquarius. If you want to see a big picture and you need some extra discipline while Saturn is in Aries right now, And then finally, this Hermes Harvest is really great stuff. Mercury and Virgo conjure oil. This is something where if you're needing to pay attention to the details or needing extra focus, this is a really good one to work with. So you can find her over on Etsy at Third Coast Mojo. Sign up for her newsletter as well. You can get discounts at Third Coast Mojo. I also have a newsletter where you can find when I'm going live and offerings from Third Coast Mojo when classes are coming out. So if you subscribe to that, you can be up to date with all of these things. I also have a buymeacoffee.com account where you can support the channel. You can also purchase a super chat while I'm live today. That is a great way to support the channel. But if you want to become a member, a monthly member, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com. Thank you so much for everyone who was able to contribute today. Okay, so those are our announcements. We are going to dive into the astrology of July. We're going to talk about some big picture thoughts. The way that I like to do these talks today, or just in general when I do the monthly, is I am looking at weather, the space weather, and we're going to start with an overview. We're going to start with kind of the big picture overview thoughts, and then we're going to zoom in to the sun moving through each 10-degree section, which is called the decan. And we're going to kind of go through all of the granular details of what's going on in those specific 10-degree sections. And in between all of those 10-degree sections, I'm going to explain what the sun is spotlighting during that period of time, because the sun moving through those decans is giving us sort of a canvas that we're painting a lot of these other aspects on. So a number of things that are going on this month with our big picture thoughts. The first thing that comes to mind when I was doing my notes, and we spend multiple hours preparing for these monthlies. So you can see here, like there's very detailed analysis and all of these things. It's multiple pages of this. Some of the things I was noticing were, first of all, the Mars-Uranus conjunction in Gemini. That's something that astrologers have been taking a look at and circling in the astrology of 2026. And that is going to be perfecting or coming to fruition around the 4th of July. It also happens to coincide with the 250th birthday of the United States. And Mars and Uranus coming together in Gemini could be some kind of unexpected challenge, unexpected severing or separation. It could be something that's bringing us distractions, right? Where we have unexpected distractions, that our attention is split in a lot of different directions. We will break that down at the very beginning of the month here. But that's something that could be a little bit difficult to deal with, I think, on some level. And it could be something where to prepare ourselves, we want to make sure that our nervous systems are centered, that our schedules aren't overfilled, so that if something comes up that is unexpected, Uranus is often bringing us things that we couldn't have anticipated or pictured in advance. The way I like to deal with that is really just through creating space in my life and in our lives for those types of things to happen and to be able to deal with them gracefully. Because when we're already overfilled and then we have something like this that happens that could be potentially negative, we want to have the space to be able to deal with it. And that's the kind of thing that we can do with our knowledge of astrology, is if we see something like this coming, just creating some extra space, practicing some extra self-care, making sure that we're practicing all of our nervous system regulation type of things, and understanding that we don't have to pay attention to every single distraction, right? I think that we want to make sure that we're paying attention to the things that are most important in our lives, those that affect ourselves, our families, and our communities. But there are going to be some things probably happening with the Mars-Uranus conjunction in Gemini that don't necessarily necessitate our attention 24/7. We might need to be aware of it. We might need to be aware of what we would do in a circumstance of challenge or crisis, but we also need to pace ourselves. And this is one where that could prove a little bit challenging. So knowing that that's coming in advance, we also don't want to take unnecessary risks. Like the Mars-Uranus signature is like unexpected violence, unexpected injuries. Think about the 4th of July in the United States and people blowing things up, literally and figuratively and symbolically and in real crises. And I think that those are some things that we can anticipate around this. So be careful if you're in a place of danger around the world, but also be careful if you're having a celebration. If you're shooting off some fireworks, extra precautions. You don't want to lose a hand. You don't want to lose a finger. And Gemini rules the limbs, the shoulders, the hands, the arms, etc. So make sure you give yourself plenty of distance if you're doing those types of celebrations in the United States. We also have Mercury and Jupiter cazimi this month. So Mercury is going to make a cazimi in, this is going to be happening in Cancer 3. Jupiter is going to cazimi in the first decan of Leo. So those are some things to keep an eye on for the month. Mercury is going to station direct after its retrograde motion that's going to begin at the end of June. So those are some planetary movements that we should keep our eye on, some new starts for all of that. Jupiter is going to move into Leo and Venus is going to move into Virgo. So Jupiter is going to lose its exaltation dignity. Venus is also going to be moving into her fall. So this is another thing that could be a little bit challenging moving forward. So these two benefic planets are going to be losing some dignity in July. So make hay while the sun is shining, I guess, in the end of June and in the very beginning of the month, potentially. And then finally, another thing I've had my eye on for a long time is the retrograde of Saturn. So Saturn stations retrograde, 14 degrees of Aries, and it's going to be retrograde all the way until December the 10th. And it's going to retrograde all the way back to a degree that was very active, 7 degrees of Aries, earlier in the year when we had a lot of things that were highlighting a number of different people's charts. A lot of world leaders had some kind of planet that was either at this degree or was being squared or opposed by this degree. So we might be seeing some bigger picture things being revisited, reviewed. I've been working with a theory from Eastern astrology where a fallen retrograde planet potentially could act like its opposite in its exaltation. So that might be some good news potentially with that. Let's test out the theory. Let's see if it works. We have a working theory, and then we want to test it against our experience. So that's something I want to keep an eye on as well. Okay, let me check in with the chat here. We've got some people coming in here. Lena Ocampochic says, yo, hi, bro. Okay. Nice to see you, friend. Hope everything's going your way. Hope you're finding something for you today at this broadcast. Okay. Let's see. So those are our big picture thoughts for the month. And now let's zoom in into sort of a medium range view where you can kind of get an overview of the sort of the, not necessarily the 30,000 foot view, but a little bit closer examination. We're going to talk about the lunations. So we have a few different phases we talk about with lunations. These are the new and the full moons and the quarter moons. We have a last quarter moon on July 7th, which happens to be my birthday, so happy birthday to me. But that is at 15 degrees of Aries. So we have a last quarter moon in Aries, so reducing some of the Aries qualities to be able to carry out the mission of the sun in Cancer, that second decan of Cancer related to protecting something so that we can grow it to a full fruition. That second decan of Aries is more about royal decrees, so we might need to maybe reduce some of our attachment to our individual belief systems so that we can work together with a group or with a family or something like that. That could be part of the last quarter moon. We have a new moon at 21 degrees Cancer on July the 14th in the third decan, right? So this is something where we might be getting some insight into scarcity versus surplus, be having some ideas about how to share our abundance with others. That could be something with that new moon coming up. We have a first quarter moon at 28 degrees of Libra. That is on the 21st of July. That'll be the second first quarter from the Cancer to Libra quality square, right? So we're going to deal with that at the very, very, very end of June, I think, here, right at the solstice. We're going to have a quarter moon in Libra and squaring the Cancer Sun, and then we get it from a different decan. So I'll talk about the differences of how we might be dealing with one of those quarter moons and then the one that comes after. Then we have a full moon at 6 degrees of Aquarius on the 29th of July that is opposing the Sun in Leo. So this is a point in the lunar cycle where we're going to be trying to figure out how to wield our spotlight, how to figure out how to become visible, but also have some tension between feeling like that might be a little bit uncomfortable, could be maybe even a little bit dangerous. We're having some challenges right now with feeling committing to our authenticity or being allowed to commit to our authenticity with the rise of censorship in our communities and online spaces. So that's something that we'll discuss as well. All right. Let's see. Ani is here. What's up, Ani? Nice to see you, friend. Hope everything's going well your way. Tahir Keskin is here. Says, happy birthday, my friend. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hope everything is going well your way. Thank you for being here in the chat. Okay. So we have ingresses of planets. So we talked about the lunations, the new full and quarter moons. Ingresses are when a planet moves into a new sign, and oftentimes that just shifts the energy for us. It puts a spotlight on a different topic in our life because the planet, via whole sign houses, is moving into an entirely new topical house. We have the ingress of Venus into Virgo on the 9th of July. Venus is going to be moving through Leo as I'm recording this in the end of June all the way through the beginning of July. And it's going to lose some dignity. Like, it doesn't have a ton of dignity in Leo itself, but it's not necessarily debilitated. When Venus moves into Virgo, it's a little bit challenging. Venus likes to bring things together, likes to harmonize things. Virgo is a sign via its ruler Mercury that casts things into doubt, that separates things into categories. Sometimes when we're trying to bring things together, we have this natural energy of separation, of categorization, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to harmonize. So we'll discuss that at greater length when we get to that in our daily exploration. We have the Sun moving into Leo, which is an improvement for the Sun's dignity. Okay, the Sun is going to be moving into its own home, its own domicile in Leo on the 22nd of July. So that should be interesting. It's going to be part of a series of oppositions with Pluto, though. So Leo season is not going to be necessarily all sunshine and rainbows this year. It is I don't know if it ever is necessarily, but some Leo seasons are tougher than others. We have Venus and Jupiter over the course of the next few weeks making an opposition to Pluto. We have the Sun making an opposition to Pluto. And then we also are going to have in the early weeks of August an eclipse, right? We have the nodes are going to be shifting positions in July. We have the North Node retrograding back into Aquarius, okay? The nodes generally move backwards, okay? Sometimes they move forward, but most of the time they're retrograding backwards. And we have the North Node moving into Aquarius and the South Node moving into Leo. So the North Node increasing potentially our awareness of others, our awareness of how our actions affect other people rather than in a subjective perspective. That's probably the best case scenario, is increased objectivity. On the flip side, we could see an increase in feelings of isolation, in feelings of distance, in feelings of homogenization or being forced to try to conform or homogenize to the collective, more difficulty expressing our most authentic self. These are all spoken to towards with the South Node in Leo. The North Node generally in traditional astrology represents a place of increase. The South Node a place of decrease. So we're decreasing our subjective individual perspective, for better or for worse. We might not be able to assert our will as much as we might desire to with the South Node in Leo. And then we have an eclipse that's coming in August where the Sun, there's a new moon solar eclipse in Leo close to the South Node. So a really powerful moment for reducing Leo qualities, reducing our ability to assert our will in the way that we choose. And again, that could be very painful for some folks that are used to having their way, that are used to having power. Eclipses in traditional astrology often mark the end of a kingdom, the end of a ruler. So there could be something of that nature that we're seeing coming to fruition. But I think in the positive terms, being able to understand what unites us, how your actions in one area of the world have an effect on some place in, completely distant from you. Being able to see long term and to take actions that are in service of the collective rather than just from your individual needs and desires. And that could be some positive things that we're really, I think, in need of right now in today's society, is trying to think about how our actions affect others, maybe look into the future a little bit more to see how many generations the actions we're taking now are going to affect. All of those things I think could be very positive. It is Saturnian though, so there could be some things that aren't so fun that come with it too. I guess one final thought on that, and I'll revisit this, but there is also the potential for censorship with an increase with the North Node in Aquarius, an increase in our feelings of being observed and the uncomfortableness of being observed, right? If we have the South Node in Leo, it's like the spotlight feels painful, right? Or the observation or being observed feels painful. When the North Node in Aquarius, we might want to disappear. We might want to just blend in with the crowd, so to speak, and that might feel safer. So we'll talk about ways to navigate that potentially. Solar phases for this month. Solar phases are the relationship of a planet to the sun, whether it is visible or whether it is under the beams. Generally, when a planet is near the sun and from our vantage point on the Earth, it can sort of disappear, right? We can't see Mercury, for example, when it's so close to the sun that the light of the sun blocks it out. And that has symbolic meaning. So we will take a look at whether the planets are under the beams or whether they're conjoining the sun, which is called cazimi, or in the heart. And we're also looking at whether a planet is stationing direct or retrograde, which can talk about shifts in fortune. Okay, so solar phases for the month of July. On July 2nd, Mercury is going to retrograde under the beams of the sun at 25 degrees of Cancer. So this is a point where Mercury is going into the beams and being renewed in the heart or the furnace of the sun. There is some literature that talks about Mercury playing the role of psychopomp, which is a fancy word for guide of souls to the underworld in Greek mythology. And there are authors, one of which, Gary Caton, is a good example of this, who did a lot of work on Mercury. Talks about Mercury going under the beams as Mercury going into the underworld as psychopomp. Practically, what that could mean for us is that we're going into our past, or going into our intuition for knowledge. We might be pulling back from external communication and trying to figure out what we truly believe. We might have some things that we're revisiting from our past that we need to let go of eventually at the cazimi. In Cancer 3, this could be related to how we engage with luxury, scarcity, having more than we need or having less than we need. How do we balance those things out? Mercury is a planet that asks questions. It casts things into doubt. We need to ask questions a lot of the time in our life to find the right answers, to find the right solutions to things. And I think this is a good opportunity to start asking those questions so that we can find solutions in our life. On July 7th, Neptune is going to station retrograde at 4 degrees of Aries. So we might have some revisiting of our visions of the things that dissolve the differences between one another. We could also be examining our illusions. We've talked a lot on this channel about Neptune moving through Aries and potentially the illusion or delusion that we have to do everything ourselves, that we have to be these islands of responsibility, or that we have to conquer new territory or something like that, or forced to take a risk, or the glamour of violence. Okay, this is something else that Neptune might be contributing to symbolically. And when it retrogrades, we might be asking some questions about that. Are we glamorizing violence? Are we glamorizing war? Are we glamorizing radical independence at the expense of community. So something to think about on July 7th. On July 8th, Jupiter is going to move under the beams of the sun at 1 degree of Leo. Now, this is really fascinating to me because the outer planets, like Jupiter, in traditional astrology, we would call all outer planets Jupiter and Saturn, right? And potentially Mars. I guess you could call them superior planets. They're superior of the sun. They're outside the orbit of the sun from our visual perspective. The inferior planets doesn't mean they're better or worse, just means that it's a visual perspective. The inferior planets, Venus, Mercury, and potentially the moon, okay? And this is a point where a slower, slightly slower moving planet like Jupiter is going to be beginning to renew itself by going under the beams of the sun and going into the furnace like Mercury. So this has some potential ramifications for a lot of different areas in our life. The Leo part of our life is definitely going to be affected because it is happening in the domain of Leo, but it is also going to have an important effect on the Sagittarius topic in our life or the Pisces topic in our life. So what you want to do is you want to look at your chart and you want to see what house is ruled by those two signs. So for example, I have an arbitrary Virgo rising chart over here that you can't see yet, but let me put it up here just to show you what I'm talking about. So here is a Virgo rising chart. And with the Jupiter Cazimi, we have Jupiter making Cazimi in the 12th house, a place of rest, a place of solitude, a place of self-undoing, a place of secret enemies, quote unquote. And in this chart, the 4th house is ruled by Jupiter, Sagittarius, and the 7th house. So you might see, as a Virgo rising, this is one example, something changing in your home life and with a partner. Okay, so, and those two topics could be connected. You might be wanting to move. You might be questioning something with a relationship or something like that. And it's going to be preparing you for the seed of a new cycle. So these Mercury Cazimis happen much more frequently, but the Jupiter Cazimi happens not quite as frequently. So this is something that we should pay a little bit more attention to. Planting the seed of visibility, right? Planting the seed of how do you want to be present out in the world? How do you want to show up in your spotlight? What do you want to utilize your spotlight and your will towards? Do you want to utilize it in service of the self or in the service of your community? Those are questions a lot of us are asking, like, and how do we balance those things? How do we balance out our personal needs versus the needs of the collective? So we'll break that down a little bit more as we go forward today too. We also have Mercury Cazimi in its retrograde cycle, and it's an inferior conjunction. That's called inferior conjunction when we have Mercury retrograde on the 12th of July. That's happening at 20 degrees of Cancer. So again, we will break down the decans of Cancer a little bit here, and the third decan of Cancer. We're going to talk about Cancer decans. We're going to talk about Cancer 2, Cancer 3, and the first decan of Leo today specifically. Third decan of Cancer, a lot of those questions are on scarcity, surplus. You might have started asking the questions because of a potential crisis moment when Mercury goes under the beams on the 2nd, and then you might be thinking about the solutions, the answers to that question when we have the Cazimi at 20 degrees on the 12th. Mercury is then going to station direct at 16 degrees Cancer on July the 23rd, and then emerge from under the beams as the morning star at 16 degrees Cancer the day after on the 24th. So you can think of the Mercury story, the Mercury narrative, like Mercury goes under the beams. We're ending one cycle. We're going internally to find answers in this particular cycle. We're finding the Cazimi moment where Mercury joins the heart of the sun. All of the old questions are burned away, and we have the seed of new questions being planted, or new answers even potentially. Then we generally will see Mercury station direct and then emerge from under the beams. Okay, so this is all part of a greater chapter narrative, right? Like different chapters in a longer narrative. On the 26th, Saturn stations retrograde at 14 degrees of Aries. We talked about that a little bit in our big picture thoughts, but it stations direct on the 10th of December at 7 degrees of Aries. That, again, that degree, 7 degrees, was really lit up earlier this year in both Trump's chart, Jeffrey Epstein's chart, Netanyahu's chart, people who are kind of big players on the world stage right now. So all of those things, there might be something that is being reviewed, like a review of the creation of laws, the review of people's power, etc. So all of those things could be up for review. And there's other correlations that are happening around those first 2 weeks of December. There's a lot going on with out of bounds planets and Saturn stationing direct, Pluto coming back into bounds. We'll talk about Pluto out of bounds this month a little bit as well. We also have the Jupiter Cazimi on the 29th of July. So that's at 6 degrees of Leo. And we will break that down in depth as we move forward as well. But a new start for Jupiterian themes, for visibility. A new start that is also opposite Pluto. So our desire to increase our will, the pressure to perform, the pressure to become visible, has some challenges to it with that opposition to Pluto. It may feel, like I said, it may feel dangerous to be more visible. It may feel scary to have our individuality threatened. It might be scary to see the forces that be trying to eliminate the ability to be an individual in our society today with the taking away of individual rights. So this is something that we'll examine moving forward again. Out of bounds planets and enclosures. There's no enclosures this month that I was able to ascertain. Usually I go look through what's called benefic or malefic enclosures. That's when Saturn and Mars are making backing a planet into a corner that could be a little painful. I think as we are recording this, we still have Mercury in malefic enclosure. And we're going to have a Venus malefic enclosure that's happening towards the end of June. But those will end when Mars moves into Gemini. Okay, so that's kind of the end. So the beginning of July, we have Mars in Gemini to start the month without these enclosures. We do have some out of bounds planets. We just the moon this month. Okay, so we have the moon out of bounds from the 26th of June to July 1st, from the 10th of July to the 14th, and from the 23rd to the 28th of July. When the moon is out of bounds, we might be feeling a little bit extra emotional. We might be feeling, our bodies might not be feeling great. I'm not sure if the moon is out of bounds today. I did some gardening yesterday and pushed myself pretty hard on maybe it was out of bounds the few days before. I think it just went back into bounds yesterday. I was not feeling very well in the early part of this week. I was having some digestive upset, and the moon was out of bounds during that period. So it could even be just that our stomachs don't feel great or something like that. Out of bounds planets generally are operating outside the normal, socially acceptable way that the path of the sun would represent symbolically. We talk about declination as the path of the sun in relationship to the imaginary line in the sky called the ecliptic. And when planets move outside of the sun's natural path, they are said to be out of bounds. Sometimes that can lead to some breakthroughs. Other times it can just be really uncomfortable and just people and planets acting out of character. Okay, so that is our medium range view. Do me a huge favor, friends. If you are joining me here today, please like the video. If you are new here, make sure you're subscribed. If you want to make a contribution to the channel, there's a little super chat button, or you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. If you have any questions that are related to astrology, I'd be happy to answer those as much as I can in the time that we have today. Let's keep going. Let's take a little stretch before we go in here. Stretch out a little bit. All right. So our more granular view is going to start with the sun in the second 10-degree section of Cancer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this Cancer 2 Decan flashcard that you can download when you purchase the Decans of Cancer webinar. I made these digital Decan flashcards to help people learn about the Decans and their associations with the tarot, the fixed stars, and the daimons that are listed in the 36 heirs of the zodiac, which is a fragmentary Hellenistic text. So these are interesting here. We've got Maru joining us today. What's up, Maru? I hope everything's going well your way. Hope that you're doing well, I believe, in Germany via Argentina, and hope everything's going well with your soccer team or your football team in the World Cup. I haven't been paying too much attention to the World Cup, but I know that it is something of a point of national pride for many folks, and I hope that wherever you're at, that your nation is doing well. Okay, let's talk about Cancer 2. So Cancer 2 is going to be the decan that the sun is moving through from July 1st through July 12th. So during this 11 day section, much of our collective focus may be filtered through this lens. Okay, so the sun in Cancer is, we have gotten to the summer solstice. As the sun ingresses into Cancer 1, we have our summer solstice, which is coming this Sunday as I'm recording this on the 19th. We're going to be seeing it happen on the 21st of June. And that is when we experience a shift in direction. We have the peak of solar power. It's the highest that the sun is going to rise from our perspective in the northern hemisphere in the sky. It is the longest day of the year. And then it starts to raise lower in the sky a little bit each day until we get to the equinox, when the day and the night are equal. And then we get to the lowest point at the winter solstice, right, where the sun is rising the lowest in the sky in our northern hemisphere. So what does that mean symbolically? Well, we might be experiencing some changes of mind. We may have to shift directions when the sun is moving through Cancer. Remember, a crab, the symbol of Cancer, moves sideways, forward, backwards. We may be having to cautiously reach our little crab claws out there to see if this is a dangerous thing or if this is something we want to pursue. Crabs are very, very sensitive to predators in their environment. I would say people in the sign of Cancer are also very aware of all of the things going on sensory-wise in their environment. I know as a Cancer sun, a Cancer second decan sun, I'm very aware of people's body language, of their nonverbal communication, of the emotional tenor of the room or the situation. And a lot of this comes through having to pay attention to these things as a young person, and having to pay attention to not only the words that were said by the adults in our lives, but the meaning behind it, the tenor behind it. Sometimes what was said was not what was meant. And a lot of people that have placements in Cancer have had similar experiences where they really had to tune in with their intuition as to whether this person, this situation, this message was what it appeared to be. So the first decan of Cancer, we saw this Two of Cups energy, okay, the Lord of Love, they call it in the Book T and the Book of Thoth, where we're understanding something that we desire, that we love, that we are attracted to. And we are trying to harmonize, especially in one-on-one relationships. When we get to the second decan, here we see the three graces in the Three of Cups. And we are dealing with a celebration, right? We're dealing with meeting up with maybe a group of people rather than just an individual, and trying to harmonize and communicate our love or our appreciation for those people in the group. It's a Mercury ruled decan. So sometimes people that have placements in this decan have a way of utilizing their words in a way that is soothing. This is something that people have said with this channel in particular. I have a son in Cancer too, and they're like, oh, your voice is so soothing. And part of that might be the moon in Taurus or the midheaven in Taurus. But oftentimes you will see people that either have Mercury here or other placements having soothing voices, or the words are having an emotional impact. Now, this could be a challenge if you have malefic planets here. If you have Mars and Saturn here, it could have the opposite effect. It could be that your words have a negative emotional impact potentially. I think that what we are trying to achieve in Cancer 2 is harmonizing the group, protecting the group. All right. You can see that Cancers or crabs have hard shells, external hard candy shells, soft caramel centers, right? And they're protecting something. And this is something that we see in Austin Coppock's beautiful book, 36 Faces, when he talks about the walled garden. We're trying to protect something so we can nurture it into its fullest form. When we went through, as we're going through these last days of Gemini, think about all of the projects that you have going, ones that you want to nurture to fruition, and the ones that you might not be able to. Yesterday, I spent a lot of time in my garden planting a bunch of native plants, and that felt really good. That was something that was on my radar as I need to commit to this. I spent the money, I bought the plants, I adopted them. Now they're my responsibility, and they went in the ground, and it was like, finally, that's off my plate. I'm looking around in my yard. This is just one example, and there's a lot of other things that I want to do that I might not have the time or resources to do this season. And I might have to let them go and say, I'm going to let these go so that I can commit to what I do want to bring into fruition. And that's when we feel that passion, that love, that spark, that chokmah in the first decan of Cancer, that awareness of that which we love and that which we want to protect. In the second decan, we go about the business of kind of quickening in the womb, you could say, right? Where things start growing because we've created the right conditions for it to grow. The downside and challenges with this, sometimes we can be risk averse in this decan. I know for me personally, I'm not a huge risk taker when it comes to physical risks. I've taken a lot of emotional risks in my life. I've taken some life risks with my career and with the things that I'm committed to, like being a professional musician for many years, being a professional astrologer and storyteller. It's a little bit risky in modern capitalistic society. But when it comes to like physical risks, I'm not really an adrenaline junkie or a thrill seeker. I would much rather just go at a slow pace, and I think that this is something that we're trying to balance with Saturn in Aries right now. We might be forced into taking risks. We might be forced and bound into making a new start. And the tension between Saturn and the planets moving through this decan could be really difficult moving forward. I know that there's been some of that tension for myself and my partner as we've been trying to work through crafting independent careers and then dealing with the challenges of that, the challenges of visibility, the challenges of managing a self-employed business, right? Without having someone hovering over you saying, you have to do this today, or making your own rules. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of freedom in that. In other ways, like there is sometimes your energy's up and sometimes it's down, and there's really, you've got to be your own motivator. And that can be challenging for a lot of people sometimes too. The daimon in this spirit is called Heracles or Hercules. And that spirit is something that has led to some significations of being challenged by the family, by being tested. I know from my perspective, growing up, I had a lot of people coming in and out of my life. I had a lot of divorce and separation in my parents' lives, and a lot of step parents and step siblings, and it just felt like I was always being tested in some kind of new environment. And that can be related to the relationship of Hercules to his, I guess, stepmother, Hera, who wasn't his birth mother. He had a mortal birth mother. And Hera was pretty upset that Zeus stepped out on her and decided to drive Hercules crazy, literally, where he committed some unforgivable sins, I guess you could say, and then had to atone for those through his labors, the 12 labors of Hercules. So in essence, Hera was testing Hercules and helping him to develop humility, helping him to develop his strength. So a lot of times when we're looking at the sun through here, we might be tested by our families. We might be tested by our domestic relationships, our intimate relationships, where we are becoming better people. We're forging our character in the fire of these domestic relationships that aren't always easy. The domestic and family relationships aren't easy because we don't always choose them, right? We were born into families. We were born into a set of parents. We were born into a family with siblings, cousins, etc., where sometimes we find ourselves in neighborhoods that are like family relationships, and we don't always choose those. And when we don't have the ability to choose those relationships, there are tensions that can arise. And this is a decan where there might be some spotlight on being tested through that. The good part about this decan, it's like the height of abundance in the beginning of summer, right? We got fruits and vegetables that are starting to ripen. We've got life all around us. We have celebrations, like in America, we celebrate the birth of the country during this period of time. If you're an American, you're familiar with the backyard barbecue on some level, like where we're getting together and sharing our abundance with one another. You could see this in the three graces here. So there can be some really nice experiences that come through this too, beyond the testing part of this. There's some really important fixed stars in this decan: Alhina, Sirius, and Canopus. Sirius being one that I really want to focus on. Sirius is what brought back fertility to the Nile River Valley in ancient Egyptian society. So there is this ability to bring back life with the sun moving across this planet, and sort of this attachment to immortality too. There's some stories that talk about the pursuit of immortality, especially with Egyptian culture trying to preserve the body as it transitions into the afterlife. Okay, so that's the sun in Cancer too. You can learn more with the Decans of Cancer webinars if this is something that resonates with you. Okay, so let's go and we'll start breaking down the daily movements throughout the month. We start the month with a Mercury retrograde. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add this to the stage here, and we'll just have this medium sized over here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Okay, so this is Mercury making its under the beams motion. So this is going to be happening. Let's go to the second so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so not only are we going to prepare ourselves emotionally for the astrology ahead, but we're going to learn astrology. That's just one of the things I love to do on this channel. So you can see here, Mercury at 25 degrees of Cancer. It has a 15-degree arc of separation from the sun. That is a standardized arc of separation from the sun in some forms of traditional astrology. This is the one that I practice. I learned that from Demetra George, and that's something that I just have standardized in my practice. Some people will argue that the Mercury is visible at different degrees of separation, but this is a point where it could be an omen or a moment of phasis, an omen that is speaking. So when a planet goes in or out of the beams, in or out of visibility, either something is coming to light or something is being cast into darkness. Generally, when a planet moves under the beams, we have some doubts about things. We have something that is changing in our life where oftentimes we're having to let go of something. We're having to let go of an old cycle. We're having to let go of an old way of being. And then we get the insight when the seed is planted at the Kazemi. And then the results of that endeavor, that project, that seed planting start to become more visible as the planet emerges from under the beams. So that's going to be our Mercury retrograde under the beams of the sun, 25 degrees of Cancer. So pay attention that day on the 2nd as to what you're being asked to change, what you're being asked to let go of. And is it in relationship to how you deal with scarcity in your life, feelings of not having enough, feelings of boredom, feelings of jadedness, ennui is also associated with this decan, where you're just like, I've had enough. I've fulfilled my desires. I've had enough. Or if you haven't been able to fulfill your material desires, what does that look like to you? Are you pursuing things that are beyond your reach? This is another thing that we could ask ourselves questions about, is are we trying to pursue luxury that we just can't afford right now? Things are changing in society. We are dealing with a lot of wealth inequality. We're dealing with war. We have global conflicts that are happening. We're dealing with kleptocracy and the stealing of taxpayer money. We are dealing with all sorts of challenges that could make the way that we have dealt with our resources in the past not applicable for the current moment. I think this is the thing to consider with that is just because an answer was right in the past doesn't mean that it is right currently or into the future. The opposite could be true for some of us. We may have an abundance of things that we don't necessarily need. Let's say that we're fortunate enough to have more money or resources than we could possibly use. How do we utilize those resources? How do we share our abundance with others and uplift others with those resources? Maybe the abundance we have is not material. Maybe the abundance we have is time. Maybe we have more time than we need and we're just wasting it in idleness. How do we invest our time into others? How do we invest our time into worthwhile projects? Same thing with emotional resources. If you are a great listener, how can you make yourself available for people to ask you for advice? This is something that I feel like I have an abundance of is emotional patience, I guess you could say, for helping people through some of the more challenging issues that they experience in their life. It's really great for being a consulting astrologer, but it also is helpful in friendships. And what do we do with that extra time? How do we communicate with one another? All sorts of ways that we can figure out how to balance out our surpluses and our scarcities. And there's all sorts of ways to get those scarcities met that aren't necessarily traditional. I've been working a lot lately on examining what is the next best answer, right? If the first answer that we're attached to isn't happening, if we're running into a roadblock, what is the next best answer? What is the alternative to getting the same essence of the problem solved, but maybe through an alternative method? This is one thing that I've been looking, this is a very mundane example, but I have some trees I want to trim. And I have a saw on a pole but I can't reach high enough. And I would like a tall ladder. Tall ladders are kind of expensive. Like a 20-foot A-frame ladder can be up to $1,500. I could probably get the same thing accomplished if I rented that ladder for $100 for 2 days and then saved myself $1,400. I would still get the same job accomplished. But instead of being like, I don't have the $1,500 to do this, the project isn't going to get done, I say, I can, it's more reasonable to invest $100 and then the project gets done. So this is, what is the next best answer? I think a lot of the questions that we're asking at the Mercury going under the beams and then the Mercury Cazimi is, what do we do when we don't have the first ideal condition? And how do we examine what to do next? That brings us to the Mars-Uranus conjunction. We talked a little bit about this in the beginning of the broadcast, but here it is at 3 degrees of Gemini. Let me think for a minute. So one thing I want to make a connection with is we just saw Mercury go under the beams of the sun the 2 days before this Mercury-Uranus conjunction as it is coming together. Well, guess who is the host of Mars and Uranus, I guess, if you want to play that out and combine those traditional and modern planets and techniques. Mercury is hosting both Mars and Uranus here in Gemini. So a lot of the questions that we're asking about surplus and scarcity could be having an effect on this Mars-Uranus conjunction in Gemini, the first decan of Gemini. And one of the things that we think about with the first decan of Gemini, which is a Jupiter face in the Mercury-ruled sign of Gemini, is expansion of possibilities. Gemini is sort of the busy bee exploring different pollinating flowers, right? Like it's visiting all sorts of flowers. It's gaining a little bit of pollen to to eventually to do something with it, to take it back to the hive and make something with it. When we have planets moving through this first decan, we can see an explosion of thoughts, an explosion of ideas, an explosion of communication, of many voices speaking at once, many opinions, of having to see things from multiple different perspectives. When a planet like Mars is moving through this decan, it could be painful. It could feel like we are utilizing those words, those communications as weapons, right? Mars likes to use whatever resources it is given in the house that it's moving through to create severing, separation, conflict, to assert will, to remove something, right? Like it could be like a scalpel is Mars. Mars is scalpel energy, but also sword energy. A knife can be used to kill somebody, or it can be used to chop vegetables to feed somebody. So it is useful, but it can also be subjectively painful in our experiences. So the pain of having too many options, the pain of too many thoughts, the pain of too many distractions, I think that this is a splintering of attention in 1,000 different directions. And part of it could be related to Mercury moving into the beams of the sun. But the normal splintering of attention that we have with Mars moving through Gemini is supercharged this year by a conjunction with Uranus. So Uranus is already doing that splintering of attention in its Promethean way. Another maybe potentially more appropriate name for Uranus is Prometheus, the Greek titan that stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, but suffered for that, attempting to be godlike, to give godlike power to humanity. And one of the things that we see with Uranus in Gemini so far is the ability to take communication avenues, technology, the internet, intelligence is also very Gemini, and make it godlike. So think of the hype around things like artificial intelligence, around communication, around surveillance and things like that, and the attempt by some like tech CEOs or something like that to take that technology and become godlike with it. And the hubris in that. I had a very lengthy breakdown of Uranus and Gemini. This would be a good time to revisit that. I would highly recommend you go watch my multi-hour presentation on Uranus and Gemini, where I took a lot of the themes of Gemini and I filtered them through the lens that came to me through Liz Green and The Art of Stealing Fire, which talks at great length about the Promethean myth related to Uranus. And thinking about how dangerous sometimes they can be. How, yes, Uranus can bring us breakthroughs. It can bring us the unexpected. It can bring us a breakthrough in intelligence. Schmidt would compare it to a transcendental sun, where we are having some kind of big spotlight of awareness collectively about what we want to achieve or our intentions. But it can also be very disruptive. It can be something where the godlike power that we are trying to harness through the fire of the gods is not controllable the way that we thought it was. And this might be part of the reason that in that ancient myth, Prometheus suffered for that and was punished for it. I think that there is something about divine power that is a little bit uncontrollable, the power of nature, the power of something that we are trying to create and harness, but may not be able to wield that power the same way that a creator might. And I think that the same might be true with things like, the big fight right now is data centers, right? Data centers in all of our communities. And it's very Gemini, right? We need more data. We need more processing power. We need more ability to create more slop, like whatever it is. And this is one of the big questions and conflicts of our time is, what are the ramifications of that? If we put all these Manhattan-sized data centers in, what is the noise that comes out of that? What is the environmental impact? What is the social impact of using these technologies? And I think Mars Uranus conjoining in Gemini here is potentially going to give us some insight into some shocking negative revelations about information, technology, things of that nature. And it could just be something where we're getting some shocking communications that could be fearful. We could be getting something that's splitting our attention in so many different directions that our nervous systems are really overloaded. Think about a bolt of lightning. I saw a reel the other day where it was showing the true power of lightning. This is another thing that's often associated with Uranus, like a bolt of lightning of awareness. Well, it can be very destructive. Like, it just blows trees up. Like, I saw a bolt of lightning strike a pond and all the fish just like flew out. It's just this shock, I see morons swimming in a pool during a thunderstorm, and you can see the terror on their face when a lightning bolt strikes 10 feet away from them, and them realizing their hubris of swimming in the face of a thunderstorm in a pool. Like they were inches away from their own death. And this could be one of those shocking moments where we're like, oh shit, like this is real. And these are the dangers of this type of exploration, this type of information, this type of communication. So that's something to keep an eye on. And it's coded into the United States right now because of the birthday celebration. This could be an unexpected communication, an unexpected, potentially violent communication or event. But I don't necessarily think it has to be some kind of catastrophic event. I've seen Mars Uranus things in the past, and as astrologers, we brace for the worst case scenario oftentimes. And oftentimes, it doesn't necessarily have to be this catastrophic, violent type of event. It could also be a shocking separation, like where you're just like, I've had enough. I'm tired of this. I could see many people on this day deleting a social media app or something. Or maybe this is like, here's another example, a shocking deletion of TikTok. That's been something that's been on the docket for quite some time, right? Where TikTok was under threat for a period of time, and it was in danger of being shut down completely. We've seen in a lot of European countries right now, social media being limited for people under 16, right? For teenagers, and for some good reasons too. I think that there can be some very exploitative kind of algorithmic things with that can be very detrimental to young people. But there could be a shocking dissolving of some kind of communication app or device or company or something like that. That could be something that's not like radically violent, but could like throw people into a panic. Like I know when people are losing access to TikTok, they're panicking. They're like, my entire life is here. Now that should tell us something too. If our entire lives are tied in with a corporately monopolized social media app, that should really get us asking some questions about whether we are completely beholden or a slave to that company, and how do we diversify, right? It's not that the things that we were creating necessarily on those platforms was bad. It's just that if that's our only source of communication and then it goes away, that leaves us very vulnerable. So this is something to think about moving into the beginning of July. How do you diversify the channels that you can communicate and reach people? I know for me personally, I've been having a lot of struggle on social media platforms recently because I don't agree with the politics or the business model or the monopolization of our attention through algorithmic reality, through attempting to control our attention and keep us on the app at all cost. I have a real problem with that, and it makes it difficult sometimes for me to engage with those companies, with the people that support them, and to feel like I am basically an employee or a creator for those people and then getting them ad revenue. The same is true here on YouTube. You know, Google is not, the CEOs of Google are not necessarily, I don't know, doing things in a way differently than like the CEOs of Facebook or Meta or Instagram or TikTok or etc. So it's hard to escape in modern society. I think it is, these are some Faustian bargains that we have to make sometimes. But I know a lot of the way that I'm dealing with these challenges is, how do I, like when we have lightning, when we're dealing with lightning in a structure, we have to have grounding wires. Okay. We have to have grounding rods. So instead of the lightning completely obliterating the structure or the tree or whatever it is, those grounding wires and rods take the lightning, channel it into the ground, and disperse it in a way that is safe. How do we become our own personal lightning rods or grounding rods? For me, what I've been doing is been spending a lot of time outside. I've been spending a lot of time with my hand in the dirt, off of my phone. I don't want to be manipulated 24/7 by fear mongering or by, like, I don't know, dopamine like mongering on these apps. I don't want to be controlled either way, by fear or by pleasure. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think that when we think about it in that way, we have to find something earthy to ground this energy, whatever that means to you. It could be getting your hands in the dirt. It could be getting in the garden. It could be just meeting people in real life and just talking with them in real life, rather than this very structured reality that we are being forced into through exploration with social media and things of that nature. So I would say my advice with this: eliminate as many distractions as is physically possible. Have your own grounding techniques so that your attention isn't split in 1,000 different directions. Recognize that some of this might be shocking communication, but diversify your channels of communication so you're not just communicating in one way or through one channel. And reach out to the people that you care about. Try to communicate love rather than hate or fear. I think that is the other thing too. Communicate the things that you're excited about rather than the things that you're afraid of. How do we balance out what we observe as the negative creative forces by saying, no, that's not the reality that we're going to just assume is going to happen. Here's what we really want to create. I don't accept that a thing like artificial intelligence and a data center in every single rural community is inevitable. I don't think that it has to be a part of every single thing that we do. I think that there's some uses for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a complete Luddite, but I think that there's responsible ways that we have to figure out to utilize the technology. And I think that there are other parts of it that just aren't, I hope, will not be part of my experience. So this is something that I think we need to think about moving forward with Mars Uranus. And I spent extra time on it because it is kind of something that people have really been talking about a lot, especially in the astrological community. Devin's here. What's up, Devin? Selena's Gateway. Nice to see you. Hope everything is going well your way, Devin, and that you're having a great afternoon, my friend. Julene is here. Gemini Fire 65. Nice to see you, Julene. Hope you're doing well. Hope everything's going well with you and your son and the football endeavors. I got a nice update on Julene's football playing college bound son, who is having some really nice success and overcoming some challenges, but really committing to becoming someone of a good upstanding character. So Julene, I'm going to give you a high five, virtual high five, for being a good parent and a good force in your son's life. And hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Okay, let's keep going. Mars Uranus, you feel like you got a pretty decent idea of what to expect? Good. Now forget everything and be surprised. Like that's often what it feels like with Mars Uranus, right? We can have a general idea of what we think it's going to be about, but then it's like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. you know? Another thing to think about with Mars Uranus before we move off of that topic is, yes, it might come through the Gemini topic in our life, but it is going to be connected through to the Scorpio area and to the Aries area. So like in this very arbitrary Virgo rising chart that we have on the screen here, this is just a noon chart, there may be a topical challenge, an unexpected communication that is public or in a career that has a strong effect on shared money, shared resources, and the ability to communicate or your local neighborhood or environment. So those could be something. That's how you make connections and connect the dots with this type of astrology. All right, let's talk about the 4th through the 5th here. And we also have Mars making a sextile to Neptune and a trine to Pluto. So this is another sort of thing that has been active, I guess you could say. We have Uranus making this sextile here this way. We've got this kind of shape forming, right? Between this kind of triangle, I guess, this oblong triangle, with these outer planets at the early degrees of Aquarius, Aries, and Gemini. And when planets move into a relationship, they're activating all of these things. So Uranus and Gemini, an explosion of ideas, a splitting of attention, the attempts to steal fire from the gods when it comes to more intelligence, more data, you know? And then Neptune is in the early degrees of Aries, is the illusion of starting something new or having to be independent, or the glamorization of violence, or the glamorization of radical independence or starting something. And then Pluto in the first degrees of Aquarius, bringing us potentially fear of technology, fear of homogenization, fear of losing our autonomy. All of those things are coming together, and Mars activates that whole little triangle there. Okay, so if you think about all of those things, independence, fear of technology, lots of communications, you can start to weave your own narrative around it. Okay. The sun will square Neptune. I'm sorry, the sun will square Saturn on the 6th. So here is the sun applying from starting around 12 degrees. Okay, 12, 11 or 12 degrees on the 3rd. And this is happening while Mars is conjoining Uranus. All right, so this Sun-Saturn square. And it perfects on July the 6th. So here is the sun squares Saturn. And it is at about 14 degrees. Now remember, Saturn is about to station retrograde. So Saturn is slowing down. And it is also in the overcoming square to the sun. So the tension between these two planets is, we talked earlier about the challenges of the sun in Cancer. The need to protect something, the feeling of protectiveness, the feeling of wanting to nurture something to its fullest potential, but maybe being a little risk averse. Now, Saturn in Aries 2 says you are bound to make a new start. There's something in your life that where if you don't do this, there will be consequences, right? And that can lead us to feeling like we have to move very quickly. Now, there is a fixed star that is at 14 degrees of Aries. It's called Alpheratz. And Alpheratz is in the constellation of Andromeda. Okay, so there is this quality. Okay, you can see here, Alpheratz. Alpheratz was the daughter of the king. And this is from my Decans of Aries webinar. And she was had this damsel in distress energy. She was chained to a rock and sacrificed to the Kraken. And there's this fight or flight quality to Alpheratz. And remember, we talked about the adrenaline rush in Aries, the risk-taking behavior. We could feel like we're in danger. So we either need to take flight, or we're going to freeze, or there's some of that energy. There's a speed quality to it. So we may feel like we have to do everything at once, right? That we have to just push the little baby robins out of the nest before they're ready. And that tension is going to be pretty intense around this period of time, of feeling like, how do we nurture something so that it will survive against the challenges that it's going to face in the real world? Now, I don't have a great answer to this. Like this, I know that I'll probably feel this myself. Like I know that this is the day before my birthday. This is baked into my solar return. So this upcoming year probably will have to navigate the tension between wanting to be private, wanting to protect something and nurture it to its fullest form, and the pressure to launch, right? The pressure to take flight. And I don't think we have to have an answer here, especially with Saturn stationing retrograde. I think that we're going to have 6 months or so until December to figure it out. That doesn't mean that we won't have pressure to do something, but I do think that the way that I see this playing out, friends, is we may feel we have pressure to launch something independently. And that could be putting a lot of stress on our family relationships, on our intimate friendships, partnerships, where we feel like we have to launch this thing and we can't wait for anyone else to go along on the ride. I think when we see Saturn retrograding in its fall, based on the theory that I'm working with retrograded fallen planets acting as their opposite exaltations from Jyotisha, I think we're going to have some help. I think that we're going to actually have a partnership that becomes very important, that we won't have to do everything on our own. So I would just be very patient at this square and recognize that there may be some sort of reprieve from having to do everything yourself that's coming with Saturn retrograding in Aries. And I would love to hear your stories about how you're feeling the pressure to launch. And then I really want to hear if was there something around the Saturn station that said, oh, well, maybe there's some opportunity for partnering. Maybe there's some opportunity to receive help, rather like Saturn acting at like its Libra quality. I saw this happen last year with Saturn retrograding in Aries, where a series of events happened that sort of launched careers based on relationships. And that was very fascinating to me. And I'm curious to see if something like that happens again this year. All right. On the 7th, happy birthday to me. The birthdays keep coming, right? I'll be 46 this year. I hope I don't look it. I hope I'm keeping it tight. I've got a few little grays that are coming in on the beard. I think I've earned those, though. I think I've earned them. We're only as young as or as old as you feel, though, right? If we keep on doing stuff, staying active, using our brains, hopefully we can continue to be healthy moving forward. But Neptune is stationing retrograde at 4 degrees of Aries on July the 7th. And this is a thing that we talked about a little bit earlier with the potential of Neptune to create glamour, and for better or for worse. You could also use the word illusion or delusion. To me, Neptune has a dissolving quality to it, right? Ani says, get it right, get it tight. There you go. Well, maybe that'll be my midlife birthday crisis this year, Ani. So how do I get it right, get it tight? I've been more active in the garden. I've been trying to get it a little tighter from being a little bit more active out in the yard. And it's working. I think it's working. But when we talk about Neptune and the illusions, the glamours, we also have the quality of Neptune, from my observations, personal observations, to dissolve, right? It has an oceanic quality. Its name is the ruler of the oceans, right? Neptune, the god of the oceans. And it is associated with, during its discovery, with like anesthesia, like dissolving the boundaries from our dream state and our reality state. I think that there is, when Neptune touches a planet, or when we have Neptune aspects, we feel like there is some transcendence or dissolving that will bring us closer together. Now, Schmidt called Neptune a transcendental moon. Now, if you follow along with me here, he would talk about Uranus as a transcendental sun, and he would compare it to the hermetic quality of the one mind, the consciousness state. He would compare Neptune to the one thing, universal substance. So if we have Uranus, the universal mind, and Neptune, the universal substance, when we combine those things, we have manifestation. What Neptune often will do, though, is dissolving consciousness back into substance, undifferentiated substance. To me, the actual lived experience of that is confusion, fatigue, being a little bit like tossed about on the ocean waves. And the other part of Neptune is it's associated with like the discovery of like the film industry, and I think in the late 1800s, of photography in general, is imagery, right? And a photograph is a capturing of an image, but it is not the thing itself. It is a false image, right? It is not the real thing. It is a version of it, but it is not completely real. And I think that when we have Neptune stationing retrograde, we're questioning the things that we see. We're questioning the glamours, the illusions that we've come under. We're questioning the methods that we're using to dissolve ourselves and to find transcendence. Like Liz Green has another great book about Neptune, where she talks about it's almost like a collective psychosis, a collective illusion that Neptune puts us under. Right now, the collective illusion that we have is that might makes right, and that war is going to solve everything, that radical individualism and like dominance and colonialism is going to help, the powers that be. That's the illusion that by the end of this Neptune cycle, we're kind of probably, people are going to be like, that was a real abuse of toxic masculinity, like, so there's this push towards the masculine, right? That very yang energy of Aries. And I think there could be a real backtracking on some of that toxic masculinity. I mean, look at the event we just had on the fucking White House lawn, like just literally a mixed martial arts, like glorification of violence. Disgusting to me as someone who is a peacemaker. And utilizing the grounds of the people's house to do so for a for-profit event, glamorizing violence, is probably one of the most disgusting displays that I think I've chosen not to witness. But I think that the idea of it is very Neptune in Aries, right? This people finding entertainment through violence. And what does that mean for us as a collective? What does that mean for us as a society when we're glamorizing these violence tendencies, right? What does that mean for us when we're trying to find ways to coexist with one another? Up for review on July 7th. Also on July 7th, we have a last quarter moon. Okay, so you can see here that we have the sun at 15 degrees of Cancer, and it's going to be coming together with the moon at 15 or so degrees of Aries. It's activating the sun moon square pretty much again. Like, so when you have something like the sun and sun Saturn square, activated, when you have something like the sun Saturn square and then the moon activates Saturn, this is something that's just like ringing that note very loudly. The moon is like a music box cylinder that is striking the notes of the other planets and helping them reverberate out into our physical reality. And this moon, this last quarter moon, is really going to be striking the chord or the discord, I guess, of Saturn and the sun being squared from Aries to Cancer. So a lot of the challenges that we talked about with Saturn and the sun are going to be activated by that last quarter moon. Now, one way to deal with last quarter moons, in my experience, and from learning through authors like Austin Coppock, I have a feeling that the way to deal with last quarter moons or waning moons is realizing that we have to release some of the qualities that the moon is moving through to be able to accomplish the aim of the sun. So if we are trying to accomplish the aim of protecting something that is sacred to us and helping it grow to its fullest form, the moon activating Saturn in a place of impatience, in a place of royal decrees where we say, this is my way and I'm going to do it this way. We may have to reduce those qualities to be able to protect something that we are invested in. We may have to practice patience. We may have to say, it's not going to happen right this second that we want it to happen at this last quarter moon. We may have to make compromises with family members to be able to create harmony with them, rather than saying that, no, I don't like that, and I'm just going to do what I want, and the other person can go to hell, right? This is the point where we're questioning. It's an existential crisis where we're questioning whether our methods to achieve the consciousness of the sun is working, if we're able to manifest it or not. We're releasing at the last quarter moon. That brings us to Jupiter going under the beams. So all of these events, the Mars-Uranus conjunction, the Sun-Saturn square, the last quarter moon, all of this is in context of Jupiter heading under the beams the next day. So you can see here, now we have Jupiter going under that 15-degree kind of separation, and it is moving closer to the sun. It is becoming invisible in the evening sky. Before this date, you could probably see Jupiter, but when we get to this point, we're not going to be able to see Jupiter in the evening sky anymore. It's going under the beams of the sun, getting ready to renew itself at 1 degree of Leo. Now, that decan of Leo is related to the 5 of Wands. So here's the 5 of Wands decan flashcard. And you can see some people struggling for dominance. Some people trying to figure out something through a mock battle, through a competition. This decan is related to feeling the pressure to perform or the pressure to compete. I will often see this card or this decan related to like the Summer Olympics. Often the Summer Olympics start with this happening. We also are seeing like the beginning of NFL training camps around this time. So this is another like correlation where people are competing to make the team kind of thing. And there's probably pressure, a lot of pressure, and a lot of, money and glory at stake. And in our own lives, we are experiencing the pressure cooker that T. Susie Chang talks about in her 36 Secrets, because of the combination of Saturn and the sun. So it's a Saturn-ruled decan in a solar-ruled sign. So we feel bound, Saturn, to perform or to visibility, the sun. And I've met some people with prominent placements here, especially with people with Saturn here, that felt like they were being pushed to perform. They were bound to be visible, that they were trying to play a role. Now, this is the first step in a series of decans in Leo where we are trying to achieve not necessarily glory, not necessarily power, not necessarily fame. Okay. I think that the essence of Leo is authenticity. And to me, authenticity is defined by conformity between what you feel and who you are inside and your outer self-expression. And this decan is the first step towards creating a more authentic expression of your spiritual essence. Remember, this is the decan after the 4 of Cups, last Cancer decan, where we had our physical needs met. We're like, we've had enough. We've satiated the physical desires. What does it mean to be me now? I have these physical needs met. What are my spiritual desires? So this could be something where it's like we're trying on different masks. We're trying on different personas as we enter into visibility, as Austin Coppock calls it, the spotlight. So it may be uncomfortable trying on different roles. There could be a little awkwardness to it in this decan. And with Jupiter here, generally, when Jupiter enters this decan, we are seeing good fortune that can come through taking on and trying out a new role, all right? Taking on a new persona. Maybe one that you really feel connected to authentically internally, but you haven't actually tried it out in the physical world. I think this is really the key to navigating this successfully. Whatever role that you choose is about to get bigger, okay? The key to navigating this successfully is choosing one that is in alignment with your true inner feelings, true inner essence, and not trying to take on a role that is not suited for you. When you try to take on a role that you are not suited for, that you don't feel truly aligned with, that's when the spotlight feels very painful. That's when the attention that you're receiving feels like, oh my God, am I a fraud? Because, and in some ways, you might be, because you're taking on a role that isn't suited for you, you know? So how do we learn how to wield attention in ways that are productive, but also in alignment with our true needs? I was thinking about this. I've thought about this a lot. I'm a Leo ascendant. Third decan, by the way, if you're curious. And I've always kind of found myself thinking about attention and how to wield it and to what end. I experimented with being a professional musician, experimented with being a professional teacher. I'm now experimenting with being a professional astrologer and storyteller. And I feel like there are seeds of those in all the different things that I'm doing. But the essence of what I'm trying to achieve is communication of symbolic knowledge. And I did that through music. I did that through teaching, and I'm doing it through astrology. I'm trying to help people make connections with the symbols in their life in an emotional way, not just an intellectual way. And music was really good for the emotional connection. And to me, when I get in touch with what is truly important to me and an authentic expression of what I want to achieve, the outer form can be somewhat fluid. I think that's something to consider with this Jupiter going under the beams. If you get in touch with what your essence is, I would say too, this Jupiter under the beams moment could be a little bit of an identity crisis. Could be a little bit of an existential crisis about who are we? Who do we really want to be in the world? What do we want to be known for? How do we want to utilize our spotlight? Do we want to utilize it in service of our own selfish needs? Or do we want to utilize our spotlight to uplift others in our communities? I mean, I would tend to lean towards wanting to uplift my community. But sometimes we have to express the self to uplift a community. For example, I found it very painful sometimes to prepare for a gig, right? Like the lead up to the gig was really like, there was a lot of anxiety. I was like, oh man, I gotta make sure I don't embarrass myself. That was my greatest fear as a performing musician, is I don't want to be embarrassed on stage. So that made me work very hard to be the best I could be. When I got to the stage though, it was easy. You know, like I was in the moment. It was because of the preparation. And it's the same thing with astrology. If I don't prepare for a reading, which is a performance on some level too, for a broadcast, for whatever, I will have anxiety about that broadcast. If I prepare, I'm in the moment. I'm in my zone. I'm using my intuition because I've already, I don't even sometimes use all the notes that I make, right? Because I've already done the hours of internalizing that, just like the hours of practice that it takes to be able to play your instrument and to sing if you're a musical performer. That's the kind of thing that when Jupiter's going under the beams, how do we start practicing the roles that we want to play so that when we're when the spotlight's on, when it says it's your time and it's your time to figure out what you want to do in this world, that it just becomes intuitive rather than feeling the anxiety of being visible. Now, again, there's going to be this opposition forming with Jupiter and Pluto. A lot of our most authentic expressions are being oppressed right now. You know, a lot of people are being really marginalized. A lot of people are being really sought out and demonized by the system right now. And that's really painful. And that makes it even more confusing as to figuring out what role do we want to play? How visible do we want to be? How much do we want to assert our will versus how much do we want to not be visible for our own safety? Sometimes visibility can feel unsafe. This is why we have things like Pride Month, so that we can say, hey, people who are celebrating Pride Month, we're here, right? We are some people that are worthy of respect, of attention. And if you try to make us invisible, like you're denying a really important part of ourselves. Do you see what I'm saying? And when we try to make that dangerous or like push people into a corner, you know, same thing with like folks like they're immigrants. Like we're trying to like whitewash all of this, especially in America. We're trying to pretend like people don't exist or just eliminate them. You know, that's where it feels like scary to be visible. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is an important question to ask yourself. That's why I ask you, are you going to use your spotlight in service of the self or in service of your community? Because what you may need to do, and this is something that I've come to terms with, I was uncomfortable saying with my music career, saying, look at me, look at how great I am. I was more comfortable being visible as an astrologer, saying, how can we all be great? How can we all like utilize this knowledge to help each other? And to me, that is utilizing my spotlight to help the community. Do you see what I'm saying? How you have to go back and forth between these things? Sometimes you being a strong individual and a strong voice is what the collective needs. Does that make sense? Sometimes you speaking out and being the most radically authentic version of yourself is exactly what the community means, so that they can feel like it's okay for them to be the most radically authentic version of themselves. If you repress that, and if you conform to what is the most socially acceptable version of yourself, then I don't know if you're doing the collective the service that some people think that they are. I know that that's been true on this channel. I used to try to not ruffle any feathers on the channel and make it accessible to the most amount of people. And I still try to do that on some level, but there are certain things where I have to say, no, these are my beliefs. This is what I want to utilize my spotlight for. I strongly believe in the sanctity of life on this planet and protecting it. I strongly believe in diversity and protecting the sanctity of that. And I have to utilize my will to speak out about it. And during this Jupiter under the beams and subsequent Cazimi, you too may have to figure out what is it that you are willing to speak up about and who you are willing to speak up for. That is something I think is going to be baked into the Jupiter-Pluto oppositions. Who are you willing to speak up for? Who are you willing to be visible for and risk visibility so that other people can be allowed to be individuals? All right, let's see. Maru says, the same happened to me, Gemini Ascendant, Leo Sun, that I've always performed, but I had to stop for some years because I wasn't feeling honest. Now I'm taking the stage back with much more sustenance. Yes, substance. One of those two. Sustenance is a good combination of those two things. And thus feeling more comfortable, Maru says. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I'll tell you what, Maru, I'm starting to miss music a little bit. So I think that this is something maybe we could encourage each other to do. Yeah, substance. Okay. I think that sometimes we need to take a break from certain personas, certain roles that we play to grow a little bit. And then we can revisit them. We don't necessarily have to abandon a role that we played completely. Sometimes we do. Other times we can cycle back around to old personas from a new perspective. Like, for example, Maru is maybe she has more messages to infuse in the vehicle of music. I had a lot of messages in the vehicle of music. Like, I kind of just, I was getting frustrated because I wasn't able to write a hopeful song. I think that was one of the reasons I stopped writing songs. All my songs started to be just really sad, negative, angry. And that's not the energy that I wanted to put into the world. That was what I was feeling at the moment. That was the authentic feeling. And maybe and society isn't really any better than when I kind of stopped making music full time. But I think that there is a different perspective I might have if I revisit it. And maybe there's a different perspective Maru is having as she revisits her art, right? Maybe there's some message that we've been growing through that needs to be expressed through that medium rather than a different one. So think about your message and what medium is most appropriate for that message. Okay. The other thing that's happening on that day, Venus is moving into, actually the next day. Venus is going to move into Virgo. So this 6, 7, 8, 9 of July there's some changes happening. We've got some tension with the lunation, some tension with the sun squaring Saturn. Jupiter, the benefic, is going under the beams, and then Venus, the other benefic, is going to be going, into Virgo. Okay, so we've got, this says the 10th, but it technically transits into Virgo at the end of the 9th. So both of the benefic planets are under some stress during this period of time. Jupiter is under stress by going under the beams of the sun. They would compare that to a person taking to their sickbed, releasing something so that it can be renewed in the heart of the sun. Okay. Let's see. There we go. And then Venus is losing dignity by moving into Virgo. It is also being challenged by conjoining the South Node. So here is Venus conjoining the South Node on the 10th on Regulus. Okay. Important because that's a very powerful fixed star. It is one of the 4 fixed stars of Persia, which were harbingers of the seasonal entrances, right? The changes of the seasons. This was a fixed star of summer, I guess you could say, the solstice. I think it was a solstice star way back in the day. And here we see Venus, the planet that is trying to create harmony, moving into a sign that's related to doubt, to separating things into categories rather than blending them together. And also, it's conjoining the South Node, a sort of a universal drain, right? Where our ability to create harmony is going down the drain a little bit. Possibly because we're so fixated on how something is done rather than the essence of what is being done. So be very careful about getting overly attached to form, because Jupiter going under the beams saying you may have to change the form of what you're doing. You may have to change the role that you're playing to achieve the essence of your authenticity. You may need some more knowledge and some more education with Venus conjoining the South Node there. Or you may need to have more of a leap of faith. I think instead of feeling like you need more and more knowledge, more and more training, there may come a point where you say, I just need to take the leap. I need to just do this, and I will figure it out in the process. That could be some of the pressure from Saturn in Aries. I know personally this is something I've been thinking a lot about. Like, I'm thinking about new classes, new roles I want to play as a teacher, maybe as an artist, and I always feel as a Virgo stellium with Jupiter in this decan in exile, that I always need more information. I always need more knowledge. I always need more skills. And while that has helped me become very skilled, sometimes it it challenging for me to pursue, to just do things. An example of this, when I was a creative artist, I felt like I needed more and more practice before I recorded and made permanent the songs that I was writing. And it took me about a decade from the time that I wanted to record an album at about age 22 or 23 to when I actually did and released it at age 33. 33 and 34, I was recording and releasing my first album. And as a almost 46-year-old, I've listened back on some of the things that I made when I was 22 and 23, and I was like, you know what? It's raw, but it's real. And it would have been fine. And if I had just gone and just released it into the world, it would have been a snapshot of who I was at that moment, rather than feeling like it had to be just the perfect thing. And this Venus conjoining the South Node, to me, is like, you might not have to make it perfect. You might just have to release some of your attachment to it, to more knowledge, to more skilling, and just do it. Just try on the new thing, try on the new mask, try on the new persona, right? And see what happens. Experiment. I think that is part of the conjunction with the South Node. Now, the Regulus part of it, Regulus is the heart of the lion in Leo, and it has since precessed into Virgo because of the wobble and the tilt of the earth. It is now appearing to be in a different zodiacal space. And Regulus is an important empowerment, utilizing its fixed star, utilizing our attention to become empowered. There is some challenges with it, though. It's a kingmaker, right? We have the tech moguls. This is really funny, isn't it? Now that Regulus is precessed into Virgo, we have tech CEO billionaires that are sort of like the kings. We have people like Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, Peter Thiel, Bezos, people that are really involved in technical things that have become like these like very powerful moguls. And it's filtered Regulus through Virgo energy rather than just like the Leonine, like traditional king. And I don't know where I was going with that, but one of the risks of Regulus is lashing out in and trying to become powerful by taking revenge on your enemies. This is something we've seen with the current president of the United States. Is oftentimes he'll get himself in trouble through his seeking of vengeance, right? He has Mars on Regulus, so he's really activated with that. And oftentimes the reversal of power can happen through an attachment of tearing other people down. I think that's really what it is. It's not just about revenge. It's the dark side of Regulus is saying, I'm going to be powerful because you're not. Instead of, I'm powerful because I'm authentic. And I'm powerful because I am great and so are you. I think that's the best way to deal with Regulus, is saying, I'm great and you are great and let's be great together. Rather than, I'm great and you're not, and I'm going to step on your neck to be greater, right? No, that's when it leads to the downfall. That's when the hubris of Regulus comes out. So something to consider with Venus conjoining the South Node on Regulus on the 10th. That gets us to the Sun in Cancer 3. And I'm going to check in with the chat. Ani says, Royal Watchers. Exactly. They were royal fixed stars of Persia that were very powerful. Regulus, Fomalhaut, Antares, and what's the other one? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Antares is the Sagittarius one. Fomalhaut, Pisces. Regulus is in Virgo. And then I'm missing Aldebaran, which is the Gemini one. Ani says, yep, we were talking about Regulus changing signs as technocratic overlords. Well, there you go. Then we're on the right track. We're on the same wavelength for sure. Okay, let's do this, friends. Before we dive into Cancer 3, do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe. Let's take a little stretch break. Stretch your legs out. I got to make sure I stretch. The lactic acid in my hamstrings is strong today. I'm doing a lot of squatting and bending in the garden. I planted over 20 native plants yesterday in my garden, including lobelia, red lobelia, cardinal flower, which attracts hummingbirds. Really cool. I'm excited about that. Planted something called monkey flower, which sort of looks like an orchid. It's a native orchid-like flower. I'm very excited about that. We put some bottle brush grass in. We planted more yellow comb flower. What else? Ironweed, which is like this 6 foot tall, like purple flower that is native to my area in Michigan. Shrubby cinquefoil, also called 5-finger grass, which has magical properties. We planted a couple of those shrubs, which is, I know Tanya's really excited about that for Third Coast Mojo workings. We put in, what else did we put in? Bone set, which has magical properties. We planted some bone set and some swamp rose mallow, which is like a hibiscus flower that is native to our area. Super cool. Some mountain mint, you know. These were just little things we picked up at the native plant sale a few weeks ago. We finally got them all on the ground. It's very exciting. But do me a huge favor. If you like astrology and you like gardening, subscribe to the channel. I like to talk about both things. That's one of the things I'm really passionate about is native pollinator habitat. Speaking of which, I should post, that is something I should post more about. I have monarch caterpillars on our butterfly milkweed this week. Big fat boys about to like turn into a chrysalis. I think that utilizing the technological spotlight to promote those ideas, I can get behind. And yeah, it's super exciting to see the dream come to fruition and to share those types of things with you as a group. Okay, let's get back to it. What do you say? What do you say? Let's talk about Cancer 3. So we're moving to the second part of the month. We're doing it in 3 acts. We've completed Act 1, which was pretty busy. Act 1 was pretty busy for July. Act 2 says the sun is moving through Cancer 3. And what does that mean? Well, let's look. The sun in Cancer 3 is related to the 4 of Cups. And here we see someone who has 3 cups in front of them and is being handed another cup by this disembodied hand from a divine cloud of some sort. But he's got his arms folded and he's like, no, I've had enough. I don't want anymore. I'm full. I've had my fill. The Book of Thoth calls it the Lord of Luxury. And we've talked about the scarcity versus surplus kind of feelings. Austin Coppock calls it the overflowing cup, where we've had all our physical needs satiated. We may even have too many emotions, right, with Cancer. What do we do with those excesses? This is a lunar decan. It's the most lunar decan. It's the lunar face and a lunar sign. Think of it as a moon in Cancer type of face. The spirit in this decan is interesting. It's Hecate. And Hecate is the triple lunar goddess that has the powers of bringing things into fruition, but also the powers of casting things back into death. So there is this awareness that when we receive in this decan that someone else is having something taken away from them. This is a lot of the thoughts with this decan is surplus versus scarcity. Luxurious taste is something that they talk about, but it's really a decan of excess. And I think that when we're talking about the existential crisis we have, I have lived the existential crisis of Cancer 3. I have Mercury retrograde in the 12th house in Cancer 3, ruling my 2nd house and my 11th house. There's under the beams of the sun, there is a lot of questions that I have around surplus, around luxury, around wealth, and what it truly means to be wealthy, and about scarcity and what lack truly means too. I think this is an equally important question. What does it mean to not have enough? And when we feel like we're lacking something, are we really? Like a lot of times the first thing that comes to my mind is more money, more problems, right? Where we feel like sometimes that having more money is going to solve all of our problems. And in some cases, it does. Let's not beat around the bush. Sometimes having money can solve a lot of problems. But there is also a flip side of saying, where is the point of diminishing returns? This is the question that we are having as a community right now around the world as we see wealth inequalities and wealth gaps widen and widen. How much is enough? How much do we really need? How many do we need? Do we really need trillionaires in the world? Like, that's a question that we can ask. Like, do we need Elon Musk to really be a trillionaire? Is that actually benefiting anybody in this world besides him? Spoiler, it's not. Like, but I think that is he a Cancer 3 son? I don't know. He probably has something in Cancer 3. I think that this is a place where we start to get a little bit jaded with getting our physical needs met. I want to make that distinction too, because the moon is often associated with the body, with physical incarnation, physical reality. And when we're getting to this point, we've had enough to eat. We've had enough that we're just like, this isn't making me happy anymore. We've had 5 pieces of cake and now we're starting to feel sick eating cake. Not that cake isn't wonderful. Objectively, cake is wonderful for most of us. But when we have 5, 10 pieces, it doesn't become wonderful. If we're being forced to eat more cake after we've had enough, it can cause all sorts of problems. When we have people that have become millionaires, that's probably wonderful for them. But then when they start to become billionaires, and especially when they start to become trillionaires, it's probably like they've had too much cake. And maybe if they shared their cake, someone else could get the experience of enjoying one piece of cake rather than them being like, I'm eating all the cake. I'm just imagining Elon Musk smashing red velvet into his face. This is the sound he makes. I'm going to consume every fucking resource on the planet. And once I'm done doing that, I'm going to Mars. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, how much cake does this guy need, right? And that's the Cancer 3 question that we have coming around. Okay. And there's some fixed stars in here, Castor and Pollux, the 2 fixed stars of the twins of Gemini. And we have one of the mortal twins at 20 degrees of Cancer, where sometimes this fixed star is related to being a storyteller. So a lot of times people that have prominent placements in Cancer 3, myself included, are telling stories. I love telling stories. I'm so interested in myths and stories. Pollux was the immortal twin, where he had a little bit more suffering, right? Castor is kind of the storyteller, maybe seeing things on the brighter side potentially. Pollux sees things a little bit from the negative side. Like, he's the twin that lived. He's the boy that lived after his brother was sacrificed, and he had to make a sacrifice of some of his immortality, right? So this might be a storyteller that's maybe focusing on some of the darker sides of reality, right? Procyon at 26 Cancer, that's in a constellation related to raccoons or like the little dog. And it's sort of announcing the bigger dog, Canis Major, it's Canis Minor, is in where Procyon is in. But it's sort of like something that's ephemeral. It's saying, here's something before something bigger is happening. And that's actually where Mercury is doing its retrograde. All right. So the first thing that we have in our period between the 12th of July and the 22nd, the end of Cancer season, is a Mercury cazimi. So let's bring our thing back here. Excuse me. So now we have our Mercury cazimi. Let's go to the 12th, just so we're accurate on-screen portrayal. Here's our Mercury cazimi on the 12th, 20 degrees of Cancer, on Castor. So this is one where we are experiencing, let's see what we got here. So this is happening on the fixed star, Castor, which is the mortal twin, as I was talking about, a storyteller, but also a horseman, right? So he's like a horse master. So you might see some stories in the collective about horses with the Mercury Cazimi on Castor, stories of heroic horsemanship. But this is the more optimistic of those two stars. This is a fixed star where we see some self-expression through singing or writing. Castor was said to be a skilled orator, a talented problem solver. So this might be where you're utilizing your ability to tell stories and to tell a hopeful story at this Mercury Cazimi, right? This might be something where you're saying, hey, let's plant the seed for the vision that we want in our world. Like if I'm modeling this behavior, we've talked a lot on this channel about the dangers of technology, of artificial intelligence, of the rise of autocracy, of the rise of fascism, all of these things. If on the flip side, I say, what do I want to see? I want to see a planet that's healthy. I want clean drinking water. I want to plant the seed for diversity of species. I want butterflies to survive. I want birds to survive. I want to be able to enjoy all of the beauty that I see every single day all around me, whether it's in my yard or in the woods or by the ocean or by the lake, whatever it is. I want people to be have enough, whatever that means to them. I want there to be fair and equal distribution of resources to people. I want people to be allowed to be who they are, whatever they choose to be, as long as it's not hurting somebody else, right? So these are the kind of things that we could speak, hopefully, into existence. I want to get along with my neighbors. I want to get along with people in not only my own city, state, and country, but I want to facilitate harmony between nations. I want people to understand that this earth is united, that if we all were to get into a spaceship and go and look at this earth, we'd have a little bit different perspective as far as how small we are and how united we are and how lucky we are to share this planet together rather than just blowing it up. How do we heal it and be good stewards of it? These are the types of things that you can start to write and speak into existence at this Mercury Cazimi. What is your vision? What is your hopeful vision for the world? What is your hopeful vision for your life? Great day for journaling, and journaling from a hopeful perspective. Yes, your lived reality may look different than what you have written down, but the first step towards manifesting those things, and this is not necessarily just some woo thing, okay? Like this is not like The Secret where you're like, I just really want a Lamborghini for myself and a mansion in the Beverly Hills or something like that. No, what we're talking about is the beginning of manifestation is taking the vision, the idea, the dream, writing it down, organizing it, and then taking a physical step and action towards it. Okay? If you want to be able to see birds and butterflies in your yard, take out some of your grass and plant native flowering plants. You want more monarchs in your yard? Create more habitat for them to lay their eggs. That is how you take a vision and then turn it into reality. It's not just, I want this to happen, and then I'm just going to sit here. It's not happening. Why isn't it happening? Oh, come on, God, divine universe. Why isn't it happening? No, that's not how manifestation works. Sometimes there's little miracles here and there, but oftentimes, the divine will meet you halfway, right? It's not that you have to do every step of the way. It's that you have to open yourself up to take the next step. And in this case, the first step is to have the vision. And then you open yourself up to be guided towards what the next step and action that you have to take to make that vision a reality. That's when you become a powerful manifester. That's the essence of manifesting a spiritual vision on this physical plane. The combination of dream and action. Okay. That is also building towards a Venus-Uranus square. All right. So in the midst of a Mercury Cazimi, we have Venus conjoining the South Node, and it is squaring Uranus, and Mars is in the overcoming square to Venus. So what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at a lot of overthinking. We're looking at a lot of, oh my God, I don't know how to do the thing I want to do. Oh my goodness, I've got so many things I want to do, but I feel inadequate to the task. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to be a completely different person if I want to manifest this vision. There's some anxiety involved in this. There is some outside the normal thinking and desires. I think that this Kazemi, you can think about the things that you want to manifest that may be a little bit flights of fancy. For me, like thinking about like the global health of the planet is a kind of a big ask, right? But we can take that vision and we can do something small with it. Like every little plant that I've planted in my backyard feels empowering. Do you see what I'm saying? It feels like I've taken one step to become what J.R.R. Tolkien called the eucatastrophe, the good catastrophe. Imagine you are Frodo and Sam and you are on a rock in the lava flows of Mount Doom after you've cast the ring into the fire. And you're looking up and you're like, I guess this is it. I guess we're going to die. We've carried out our task and that's it. We're done. And then above you, you hear the flapping of wings. And for a brief moment before you pass out, you see these giant eagle claws come and grab you and carry you away to safety. That is the eucatastrophe that happens over and over. The eagles represent the eucatastrophe in Tolkien, the good catastrophe, the intervention, the divine intervention. And to me, when we plant like native pollinator habitat, we are becoming the eucatastrophe for some butterfly that sees a sea of lava flows, right? Of basically turf grass, no food, no place to lay their eggs. And then they see the little island of native, milkweed. And they're like, oh shit, there is my oasis. And you become that, right? So in your Venus-Uranus visionings, how can you start to become the eucatastrophe in your community, whatever that means to you? Even if it feels bigger than you, how do you become the small little oasis of good in the sea of crap, if that's how you visualize it? All right. And how do you release attachment to the form that it's going to take with Venus squared Uranus with the South Node involved? How do you say, I can become an agent for change if I myself release attachment to how that change needs to look? If I release my attachment to perfection, if I release my attachment to feeling like I have to have every single, like this is a problem I have with my garden. The hardest part for me planting my garden was not digging a hole for the plants and putting them there. The hardest part was like, where do they go? And what do they need? And what are they going to look like 10 years from now, rather than what do they look like today? And it took me some time to say, you know what? We'll just put them there and we'll take some time to plan them out. But eventually, if you plan too much, if you get too attached to the form, you won't do it. You won't do the thing. And what I've learned as a native gardener is that it changes. You could put something one place and you could plan out the space and you're like, that's the best space. And then the plant will move somewhere else and it will get really big and it'll drown out some other plants. Like when I was planting things yesterday, here's an example of this. I had some yellow coneflower, which get real tall. They get like 4 to 5 feet tall, and they really spread out. They spread out about 3 feet. Okay, so imagine a 3-foot plant that just is dominating the space. And I had some smaller plants. One was called a lead plant. Okay, really beautiful little tiny leaves. It gets real shrubby, and it has these beautiful purple flowers. And it was getting completely consumed by the dominance of the yellow coneflower in the space that I put it. And I didn't anticipate the yellow coneflower getting that big. It was really happy. So I took out the lead plant and I moved it to a different space where it wouldn't be dominated by the plant that I had originally planted. And I put another yellow coneflower in there and allowed it to be itself. And that came from not being attached to the original plan that I had. And just after I learned what would do well there, making adjustments. That's a good lesson for Venus conjoining the South Node squared Uranus. Even if the first attempt at doing something wasn't perfect, you can make adjustments and not get so attached to doing something in a certain way, because life will happen. You have to leave space for life to happen. You have to leave space for the garden, the plants in your garden to shift. What you're planning right now could be completely shifted by some event in your life. Could be through a change in your family, could be through a marriage, could be through a death, it could be through moving to a new place, could be through a career change. Some of those are expected, some of them are not. The role that you think that you're playing now could be completely different because the circumstances outside of your control change. The world could be changing. For me, like, a lot of the things I thought I would be doing as a young person in the late 80s and early 90s have completely changed due to the circumstances we find ourselves in as a community. The ability to restore habitat and to hopefully continue to educate people about being good stewards of this planet has taken on enormous importance to me because of the state of our climate and our world, etc. More so than it probably would have as a young kid. As a young kid, I was just like, birds and butterflies and all of these things are amazing. Trees are amazing. I love going out with my grandfather and doing bird census. My grandfather was a biologist, and he would take me out and we would go bird watching, and we would just be recording all the birds that we saw for science. And that was really fun. And to think that future generations wouldn't be able to go out with their grandfathers, that makes me emotional. That makes me sad. It makes me feel like I'm going to cry if future generations don't get to go out and enjoy that nature. So you see how a role can take on even more importance based on the new reality that you're living in. And that Venus squared Uranus is going to be teaching us that. And that moves us towards a new moon in Cancer. Okay, so here is the new moon in Cancer on the 14th at 21 degrees. And let's just go right to there's the moon. Sorry, we shifted things around now. Here's the Cancer's on the ascendant here. So we got this new moon at similar degrees where we had the Mercury cazimi. So if we had new ideas at the Mercury cazimi about surplus, scarcity, about our vision that we want to create, about the world that we want to bring into existence, this is the manifestation seed. This is not just the idea phase, but the action phase, right? Where we're saying, hey, what's the first step that we can take? What's the first baby step that we can take to be able to create harmony between what we have in excess and what we are lacking? Sometimes when people have an excess of wealth and resources, they have a scarcity of friendship because they've stepped on people and hoarded other people's resources to get where they want to be. They say that money can't buy you happiness. Also, money can't always buy you friendship. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's true with a lot of the uber wealthy people that we see in the world today. And just because you don't have just because you don't have a ton of money in the world doesn't mean that you aren't happy. Like there's a lot of people that aren't attached to material wealth, and they are very wealthy in friendships and relationships. They're very wealthy in health, and they're very wealthy in their appreciation of the people around them, in gratitude. There are many communities around the world that wouldn't be traditionally considered wealthy by Western standards, but are actually very wealthy in their community and relationship. And those are the types of questions that we're going to be, and seeds that we're going to be planting in Cancer 3, is truly understanding what wealth is, not just what capitalist society tells us is luxury. Because you'll get to the end of your third BMW or whatever the hell that means to you, and then you still feel empty because you lack the things that truly bring people joy, which is love and relationships, I think, in my opinion, community. But there you go. That is hosted by the moon in its own face and in its own decan, so a really powerful host for that lunation. It is experiencing an overcoming square from Saturn. So again, the pressure to put things out into the world, maybe before they're fully cooked, could be part of this lunation as well. And that square is going to be forming between Mercury and Saturn. The interesting thing about that is that both Mercury and Saturn station direct for Mercury and retrograde for Saturn before that aspect perfects. That's called a reformation. So there's this tension between Mercury and Saturn forming that isn't going to perfect. It isn't going to come together. So there could be some changing in circumstances as those planets switch direction that alleviates some of that tension, hopefully. All right, from the 15th to the 18th, we have let's get back to let's go back to a noon chart. I feel like that's just a little bit easier to navigate. Okay. So on the 15th, we have Uranus sextiling Neptune and trining Pluto. Okay, at the beginning of these kind of series of aspects for a 3-day period or so. So there's Uranus at 4 degrees Gemini. Here's Pluto at 4 degrees Aquarius. And then here's Neptune at 4 degrees Aries. We talked a little bit about this forming earlier. Okay. It's this kind of I don't know what the formal modern word for this configuration is, but we have a series of sextiles and a trine. So there is positive, harmonious relationships between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Okay. There isn't a hard aspect between those planets. And all of those planets are considered outer planets in modern astrology, or transcendental planets that are much more social in nature. They're very slow moving. They're on the outer outskirts of our solar system, and they often are reflective of massive events, mass like ideas, mass psychosis when we talked about Neptune, or illusions or glamours. Pluto, things that we fear, but that we're also trying to transmute or transform on some level. And having all these planets in relationship with one another, positive relationship, could be a pivotal moment. Could be a pivotal moment where we see different ideas coming to putting fuel, like the fire of Neptune, igniting the air of the other two planets, where we're able to take new ideas and transform society with them. These are the transformation of society kind of aspects, in my opinion. Ani says the basket formation. There you go, the basket formation. Also, I missed the comment from Ani saying, no wonder I'm fond of Hecate. I see it 23 Cancer. Well, there you go. That was something in Ani's chart where a lot of their fundamental formation questions came through scarcity versus surplus. Like probably really formative experiences around that. I had a lot of those myself. So the period between the 15th and the 18th, I guess really pay attention to the ideas that are being put out into the collective, the way that they're being communicated. Are they being communicated in a hopeful way? Are they being communicated through fear? How are we working together to create some kind of shared reality that the most amount of people can tolerate? I guess that would be the way to think about it. It feels just so divisive, but again, if we take that space shuttle viewpoint of our planet, man, it really changes perspective on things. And it just sometimes makes it feel like some of the things that divide us feel so insignificant compared to the things that unite us when we take that perspective. So hopefully we can get that 100,000 foot view, that 100,000 mile view above the atmosphere viewpoint of our problems rather than the granular part of it. The 19th also sees the sextile between Mars and Saturn. So here's Mars at about So we're moving forward here. So we're seeing the moon starting to wax, and we have the formation of a sextile between Mars and Saturn. Mars will be moving through the second decan of Gemini, where it has decanic dignity. That decan is related to the Nine of Swords, where we see someone who is laying awake with anxiety. The Golden Dawn references with Aleister Crowley and the Golden Dawn, I believe they call it the Lord of Despair and Cruelty. Oftentimes words are wielded as weapons specifically in that decan. So I guess be careful about wielding your communication negatively. And then also think about how you are making royal declarations. Okay, we're talking about Saturn in Aries 2. And are you going to be able to sustain them over time? This is an aspect where we might be saying a lot of things and saying it with the full power of our chest, but it might not be sustainable. So we have to think about, how do we have a long range vision with Mars sextile Saturn here with these two planets. It could also be the ability to take action on some of our responsibilities is harmonized, but this could be more from the ideal realm and the communication realm, and in service of personal goals rather than collective ones. So that brings us to the 20th, where we have Jupiter making a trine to Neptune. Okay, so here's Jupiter trine Neptune. And also making an opposition to Pluto. So another configuration here. So we've got Jupiter opposite Pluto, trining Neptune. Okay. Leading up to a first quarter moon. Our second first quarter moon is forming in Libra. Okay, that's important. Hold on, I'm going to turn this fan on. It's getting warm in here. All right, thank you for letting me get some airflow in here. You can see my face starting to get red. It's like getting into the 80s and up here in the office, so got to get some airflow going. So Jupiter opposite Pluto and trining Neptune, when Pluto sextiling Neptune. Remember what we were talking about with Jupiter in Leo, putting pressure on us to perform, pressure on us to create a new role for ourselves, maybe try on a new mask, a new persona, maybe the feeling the pressure cooker forming to do so. And now we have a trine to Neptune. To me, this is Neptune's in the overcoming trine to Jupiter, and it is retrograding in Aries 1, where we are probably going to be seeing the expansion of Neptunian delusion. Okay. And some of the delusion in Aries 1 is related to the Two of Wands. A lot of the literature with the Two of Wands in Aries 1 talks about the Lord of Dominion, the expansion of territory, the colonization of new territory. I could see a reality where this becomes a bigger delusion, where in the collective we have the expansion, Jupiter, of delusional violence in service of conquering. Hence also the opposition with Pluto showing an expansion of fear of being visible, fear of authority, right? Fear of power. And all of those things could be spoken to here. In our personal, individual lives on a smaller scale, we could be feeling like we have to take on a new role that is more in service of our individuality. And we also could be feeling the pressure and the tension of the social environment that we find ourselves in. The roles that we're playing could feel risky. They could feel like we're not being supported with the way that things are. When we have a push towards homogenization, the roles become smaller that are social, quote unquote, socially acceptable, or that feel safer to pursue. And that could be a tension that we're feeling around this time as well, where we feel like we have to take action towards taking on a new role from the pressure of Saturn and from Jupiter going under the beams. But some of the roles that we're playing could feel dangerous. We could feel observed in ways that make us uncomfortable. A lot of times in Western civilization and celebrity obsessed West America, etc., we feel like the attention that we get via like social media, via whatever, is positive. We glorify it. I feel like there's a flip side to that. Sometimes when you're getting attention for something that you don't want, you get negative attention, that could be very, very painful. So this could also show us both sides of getting attention, like the positive part of it, the glorification of the self or the glorification of our cause or whatever it might be, but also potentially the painful part of it, where if you're getting attention for something and then you're getting a lot of pushback and blowback, that can be really uncomfortable. It could make you want to disappear. Like I've experienced this in the past where maybe I put my foot in my mouth or I said something that I didn't mean to say or that I later regretted. And then I was like, I don't want that smoke, you know? So there's both of those things at play with the Jupiter-Neptune trine and the opposition to Pluto. Now, the first quarter moon, we had 2 of these in the last month or so, or we are going to have 2 of them. The first quarter moon is happening right at the ingress of the sun into Cancer, where the sun is going to be squaring the moon in Libra 1. So that square that's coming up this upcoming weekend as I'm recording this is the tension between one-on-one relationships and an imbalance and an unfairness, and increasing our awareness of someone else's perspective with the first quarter moon in Libra 1. Like we might have to get outside of our one-on-one relationship and try to see things from someone else's perspective. We might also feel something is unfair around that first quarter moon because there's a spotlight on an imbalance. Now, when we get to this first quarter moon on the 21st of July at 28 degrees of Libra, this is the tension between the sun in Cancer 3 and the moon in Libra 3. So we're looking at the 4 of Cups and the 4 of Swords. And the 4 of Swords shows a figure that is resting, a figure that is trying to find calm and balance in the center of chaos. So we may have to increase, when we have first quarter or waxing moons, we are trying to increase the quality of the moon to achieve the goal of the sun, in my opinion. And when we're trying to achieve balance between scarcity and surplus, we have to be the calm center, right? In the hurricane, we need to make small adjustments. We need to increase our ability to make adjustments during this first quarter moon on the 21st. Austin Cobby compares this deck into a gyroscope where there's multiple spinning parts, right? And you have to keep one part spinning, and like think about spinning plates too. You have to keep adjusting one and then adjust another one, and, you know. So this is all about maintenance of balance rather than the first decan, which is awareness of imbalance. The second decan is about negotiating harmony. And then this one, we have to maintain it through making small adjustments. Okay. So this first quarter moon, there could be a little bit of a challenge about having to make some adjustments in your life. Now, we also have Jupiter making the sextile to Uranus on this day. Remember when we said we had this configuration here, this basket, thank you, Ani, with Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. And now Jupiter is going to be moving into relationship to it, rather than we had Mars activating all of it earlier in the month. And now Jupiter is making that trine to Neptune, right? And to the opposition to Pluto a few days earlier. And now we have the sextile with Uranus. So the tension that we felt with Jupiter making the trine to Neptune and the opposition to Pluto, it might force us to think outside the box a little bit. It might force us to come up with some new ways to communicate. might force us to think about new ways to deliver our message that will be received more authentically, right? Maybe there's a way that we've been doing something. I'm guilty of this as a Taurus moon. I kind of am like, I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it, and I don't actually care the feedback I'm getting about it. I'm just going to keep powering through. You know, this is a Leo thing too. Even when the reality says, yeah, you better be flexible with this. This is fixed sign, hashtag fixed sign problems. There might be a reality where you might have to adjust the way that you do something instead of just saying, well, people are going to have to adjust to me. You know, that this might be part of the Jupiter sextile with Uranus is you might have to make an adjustment, especially because Jupiter is in a fixed sign. You may have to have that bring a little bit of that flexibility of Gemini within. What Gemini's superpower is it's taking some kind of information, let's call it a capital T truth, and it is making it digestible for multiple audiences. And this might be something that where, yes, in service of your authenticity with Jupiter and Leo, you might have to find ways to reach people where they are at rather than where you are at. Does that make sense? Where we say, okay, I know I've got a message to share, but some people may only be able to hear it in this form. Some people may be able to hear it through this lens or whatnot. And that might be some of the ideas that come right before the sun joins Jupiter in Leo. Okay. So this is the sun moving into Leo. And let's go and let's take our stretch break first. And we will come back and then we will break down the third quarter. Do me a huge favor, friends. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Stretch. Get a drink of water. Make sure you're staying hydrated. If you're still with me here today, thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for your commitment to looking at things in depth and with thoroughness in an age of short attention spans. The fact that you are still here listening with me 2.5 hours later is just such an honor. And it says a lot about your character that you're able to stick this out. And hopefully we're just doing good work here. Also, friends, here's another thing. I do these the way that I do them. A lot of it is just because that's the way I operate. I'd rather just do my monthly brain dump here. But you don't necessarily have to consume this podcast all at once. One of the best ways to do the monthly is to come back to it when the times that we're talking about come up in your life. Revisit the video and take it in bite-sized chunks. I just want it to be here as a resource for you. But if you want to come back and say, hey, what's going to happen when the sun moves into Leo? You could be revisiting this a few days beforehand to get you prepared. And that would also be equally as valuable. All right. Let's do it. We're rounding second base, heading to third, and we're taking this thing home. Sun in Leo 1. We have discussed this at the beginning, but this is a Saturn-ruled decan. It's called the Lord of Strife in Book T and Book of Thoth. Austin Coppock calls it the Spotlight. The daimon here is Hephaestus. Hephaestus being the blacksmith related to the Greek blacksmith who was not the most attractive of the Olympian gods. He had some injuries. I think that he was not Hera's favorite either. If I'm remembering correctly, I feel like Hera tossed him out a window, and that was why he had some injuries that were really difficult for him. He is, of course, the consort of Aphrodite. So there's some really interesting symbolism to unpack with that. Like, to create something beautiful, sometimes we have to do the hard, ugly work behind the scenes. This might be part of the Hephaestus nature of this decan too. There might be some pressure, like to forge something in the fire. We may feel like we're being forged in the fire, like we're getting pushed out of the nest, and we have to perform. And it's like, oh shit, here's the spotlight, and the spotlight comes on, and you're like, and you start doing your dance. That's like, what is that, the Cantina song from Star Wars? I hope that if you're in a spotlight and you're like at an open mic, you just don't start tap dancing to the Cantina band song, although that could be entertaining. We'll see. But this is a time where we're going to be focusing on those roles that we've been talking about, the role playing, the search for authenticity. And oftentimes the first decan of a sign, we feel the lack of authenticity. We might be putting on a mask. We might be putting on a persona that doesn't feel right for us. And we might be, through that exploration, we find out what is right for us. We find out what is in harmony with our heart. We find what it is in harmony with our soul's purpose. So this is an experimental phase of Leo, okay? So if we go to the unfolding of this, all right, here we have the station of Mercury, okay? This is Mercury stationing direct at 16 degrees of Cancer. So right as we start Leo season, okay, a couple things are happening. Mercury stationing direct. The sun is starting to apply to an opposition to Pluto. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind. The sun is also powering Jupiter. Okay, so instead of being in aversion to Jupiter, not being able to provide those resources, now we have a battery connected to Jupiter saying, here, to the moon, you know? So this is something where we probably are starting to get some clarity about our domestic situations, about how we protect things versus the risks that we want to take. Remember, we had this Mercury retrograding into a square with Saturn. It's going to be within 3 degrees, and then it's going to change direction. We're probably feeling exposed from behind our veil. We're probably feeling pressured to do something quickly. But then we have these planets switching directions and say, maybe you can protect this a little longer. Maybe you can team up with someone else. Maybe you don't have to go and navigate this alone. Maybe that's part of the role of becoming authentic, is learning how to work with others. Okay, so Mercury stationing direct should improve conditions, hopefully, with your Gemini and your Virgo area of your chart. The next day, Mercury is going to emerge as the morning star. Okay, so now that it is stationing direct, it's separating by 15 degrees, and it is separating from the sun by 15 degrees in a sextile with Venus in Virgo, and in the second decan of Virgo. And Venus has decanic dignity there. Venus is able, it has a secret superpower to be able to bring something into manifestation, to be able to enclose something into matter. So this Mercury moving forward might be like, hey, I can finally take this idea I've had and make it real and make something physical from it. And Venus is starting to separate from the South Node. We might be seeing an ability to manifest a little bit easier, especially as the nodes switch signs as well. The skills that we have needed are not as weighing on our mind as much, potentially. So this could be a moment where things start to move forward into manifesting. Ani says, Mercury stations direct on Sirius. That's almost the same degree Jupiter stationed recently, and that aspect will refrain. Yep. Yeah, pretty close. Like Sirius is about 14, 15 degrees. I guess since it's a pretty bright fixed star, it would be within the orb of aspect with that, definitely. And yeah, the aspect refraining between Saturn is like, we feel like we're heading towards a blockage, but then something happens and we start moving away from it. You know, like I feel like this is when the doors open. You know, this feels like a moment where the universe starts to say yes, potentially again, around the 23rd, 24th. Okay, so if you're having frustration over the first part of July, this might be a part where things start moving forward again. Pluto will sextile Neptune on the 25th. Okay, just part of our basket formation here. So Pluto in Aquarius 1, related to exile, of feeling like we want to leave behind the centralized forces, coming into contact with Neptune and Aries. I guess I would just be careful about coming into the illusion that you will be able to escape, I guess is what a warning from experience. A long story short, back in the day, I thought that I could escape all of the ills of modern society by buying a 5-acre farm in southern Michigan and going off the grid, and found that the property was polluted, and it had been polluted for many decades. And it really made me realize that wherever you go, there you are. And wherever you go, there humanity is, and there the world is, and there really is no escape. The world becomes smaller day by day. The more people on it, the more we become connected. And I think that the most important advice I could give you with Pluto sextiling Neptune here is escaping into individualism is illusionary, because yes, we are individual points of light, but we are always in relationship with one another. And instead of figuring out how to just get your own way, right? If you're disappointed by the collective, how do we start to heal our relationships? I think that is something that I would think about with this. How do we start to heal our relationships in a way that also is helping us to embrace individuality in addition to the needs of the collective? Now, that's also setting up our Saturn retrograde. So here is, I'll go right to the retrograde time. 3:56 p.m., July the 26th, 2026. Saturn stations retrograde, 14 degrees of Aries. Okay. I'm just looking over my notes to see if I missed anything. Just a little reference about the Mercury Cazimi. Stations direct on the 23rd, emerges as the morning star on the 24th, and then it exits its retrograde shadow on August the 6th. So seeing the results of starting to move forward into new territory instead of revisiting old ground, beginning of August. Okay. Let's see. All right. Now we're current here. First quarter moon, I wrote down in my notes, many small adjustments required, increased centeredness and calm to bring order to chaos. Okay. Now we're looking at Saturn stationing retrograde, conjoining the fixed star Alpheretz. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the show. Here are some dates to keep in mind with the Saturn retrograde. It will retrograde on the 26th of July, conjoining the fixed star associated with the damsel in distress Andromeda, and with also a fixed star associated with speed, risk-taking, adrenaline, fight or flight instincts. So those things could be up for review. It is also making its opposition to the sun during this retrograde cycle on October the 4th. So this is one checkpoint. Okay, we got the 26th of July, stations retrograde. 4th of October opposes the sun, where the sun is on Vindematrix, 11 degrees of Libra. That's called the Widowmaker. It's a fixed star that is associated with challenging relationships and sometimes loss. It's also called the Grape Gatherer, so there could be gathering of information there as well. If you want to know more about that, check out the Decans of Libra webinar. I do a deep dive on Vindematrix in there. Saturn will station direct at 7 degrees of Aries on December the 10th. Now, this to me is really important, not to mention because we saw that point being very, very active in power players in the world. Sam Altman has a bunch of planets at around 7 degrees of Aries. Trump and Pete Hegseth have their planets at about 7, 8, 9 degrees of Cancer. So in a square to this position. Netanyahu has Libra opposing this position, the 7 degree of Aries. So all these really powerful players for like collective realities have important aspects around that 7 degree Aries. Jeffrey Epstein had, I believe, his moon is around that period of time. There's some planet that he has that's about 7 degrees of Aries. So all of those stories could be interconnected and up for review when Saturn stations direct at 7 degrees of Aries on December the 10th. The other thing I find really fascinating about this is that Pluto is going to go out of bounds in the beginning of August, and it will return in bounds around December the 10th. So lots of things happening on December 10th. I wonder what's going on in the collective. Maybe that's when a new Congress is taking session after an election. That could be possible. Like maybe not maybe it's being certified. I don't know if that's the new Congress takes power until like January or something, but there's some political mechanism that happens in the beginning of December, usually in America, after elections. So there's something post-election that is going to be very powerful around the beginning of December, when Saturn stations direct and when Pluto returns back in bounds. Now, the Pluto out of bounds thing we'll talk more about when we get to August, but basically the gist of that is when Pluto is out of bounds in its northern declination, related to the ecliptic, people, things like authoritarianism and totalitarianism increase. Power is taken away from people and given to individuals. This is from a book. What is this book called? Persephone's Revolution is the book that it talks about out of bounds planets, especially Pluto. And when it is out of bounds in the southern declination, which we are experiencing for the next decade or so, coming in and out of bounds, that's when we see revolutions that return power to the people. So from the 26th here with Saturn stationing retrograde, beginning of August, maybe kicked off with that eclipse in Leo that's coming in August, power back to the people. And that to me is like a very, very hopeful, especially with Saturn retrograde. Here's why. When we talk about Saturn, we have a interesting theory that we're working with right now. And I read this in Freedom Cole's Science of Light, which is an exploration of Vedic or Jyotish astrology, East Indian astrology, right? And there is a technique that talks about an exalted or a fallen planet that is retrograde acts as its opposite. And in this case, Saturn is retrograding in its fall in Aries, potentially acting exalted, like Saturn in Libra. Now, Saturn often is associated with the making of laws, the making of structures of society. When Saturn is in Aries, those structures of society are self-serving for the people in power. Like they are the whims of an individual rather than something that is fair and balanced for the most amount of people. When Saturn retrogrades in Aries, if we're working under this assumption, maybe there is a rollback of some of those abusive laws and a return back to some fairness potentially. That coincides with not only an eclipse in Leo, the reduction on the South Node, the reduction of like centralized power, the reduction of kingship, and Pluto going out of bounds in the southern declination, which has spoken towards revolutionary impulses that return power to the masses. The combination of all those things says the rollback of some of the more draconian measures that we've seen play out on a global scale. That gives me a little bit of hope. Now, does it mean that it won't be difficult? No, but at least the space weather might be speaking towards a return back to some sort of fairness and equality that we make happen as a community, right? So that's something very fascinating to think about. I would also say too, that decan of Aries, royal decrees, the rollback of some kind of solidification of some individual's royal decree. We've seen plenty of royal decrees in the Trump era through executive actions, through all these draconian power measures. And you could see like maybe the courts getting involved and saying, nope, that one was illegal. That one was illegal. This one stole money from taxpayers. You're not going to get money for this stupid fucking thing that you want. Like, I think it's with Saturn in Libra, you have a judicial system getting involved with things. So I think that there might be some court system things that get involved with this Saturn retrograde as well, that roll back self-serving laws and structures, right? Like it's the fucking ballroom, right? There's no way that thing's going through, right? Potentially the courts are getting involved in that. We saw like the reflecting pool the idiocracy with that, and now it's covered in algae, because of course it is, because everything that guy touches becomes befouled, right? So again, push back by the system, by something fair, by maybe an impartial authority to roll back the autocratic tendencies of people in power. And this does not completely just apply just to Trump. Looking worldwide, there are all sorts of autocratic entities trying to rise in power, and those could also be rolled back during this period of time. We don't want to think about this just as an American-centric thing. This is a global phenomenon. The same day, this is pretty powerful too, the nodes shift positions. The North Node moves into Aquarius, and the South Node moves into Leo. Really big shift in consciousness in in what is increasing and what is decreasing. The third decan of Aquarius is associated with the Seven of Swords. Seven of Swords talks about unstable effort. It talks about knowing when to quit, right? One of the things that we've been experiencing with Trump-led America is people who are in power trying to attempt to hold their ground in and uphold a power structure from the past, or to double down on a power structure that only serves individuals, that is idealistic from the past. You know, the whole MAGA movement, make America great again. That's like the Seven of Wands, holding your ground, I guess. Well, we see the South Node moving into that decan, where the ability to hold our ground individually and or abusively starts to drain, right? So the South Node is going to be going over Trump's ascendant. It's going to be going over his Mars. His ability to defend his power and position is going to be starting to be released. Some of this is just practical. The man is 80 years old, like trying to defend, I mean, in my humble opinion, a ridiculous position will take a lot out of you. Like when you're trying to defend abusive power practices, that's probably pretty exhausting, I'm going to guess. You know, when you're trying to defend an inauthentic position like that is, because who knows what that guy believes internally, like what we hear versus what he believes. I don't know if there's a connection with that. And if it is, God help us all, right? But the increase of the ability to step down off of a hill that we were trying to defend, knowing when to quit, knowing when to say, this is enough, I have to leave this situation. That is what the North Node moving into Aquarius to me is representing. The increased awareness also of how we are interconnected with one another. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows when the North Node moves into Aquarius. One of the downsides of Aquarius is the problematic parts of Saturn are casting certain narratives into darkness while only elevating one particular narrative, aka censorship. And we could also see an attempt to observe every facet of our life. This is something that, like, Aquarius is the all-seeing eye, right? We were seeing an increase in surveillance technology. This is part of what these AI data centers are being built for, to be able to measure every single analytical data point of our lives through our shopping behavior, through our movements, through cameras at stoplights, through our smart technology, through everything. So these are going to be things that are going to start to kind of get kicked into overdrive with the North Node in Aquarius. It might make us feel like we want to be less visible with the South Node in Leo, that we want to disappear, that we want to be off the radar. We don't want to be observed. That feeling observed is painful. It may also, on the plus side, increase our awareness of how our individual actions affect collective outcomes. That, to me, is the most positive outcome with this. Is, I think, part of the the positive parts of Aquarius say you have an understanding that what you do in your individual area has an effect on someone a state away, a country away, a planet away, a universe away. You know, and I think that that is something that we could use some more of. We could use some awareness that we are all interconnected and that there are interconnected ecosystems that need our attention. So ecosystem awareness, interconnected awareness could be increasing. Now, for those of us who have like Leo, prominent Leo placements, myself included as an ascendant in Leo, I'm going to be going through my nodal opposition. And there may be some discomfort with that if you have prominent Leo placements. You could be feeling a power outage. You might not be able to get your own way all the time. You may have to make adjustments to the group. And that could feel like, oh my gosh, my individual rights. I could see the people who doubled down on their individual rights throughout the pandemic getting much louder now and being like, oh, when me. And on some level, I understand that we have to balance out individual rights with collective needs. But I think that there's a way to be a good citizen of the planet while still being able to do most of what you want. I don't think that we should be allowed to do whatever we want. I don't think that that is healthy. I think individuals that are saying, I am going to do whatever I want at other people's expense is toxic. And that's something that could be revealed with this nodal shift, is the toxicity of pursuing our individual desires at the cost of like our collective health. Think about that with climate change. Pursuing profit at the expense of clean water, clean air, hospitable temperatures on the planet. These are considerations that we are all going to be forced to start to make with this nodal shift, I think. I hope that we start to have that global awareness rather than just from our own perspective of like, oh man, I need to make some money, so I don't really care what effect this has on my community. So things to consider with that. And we will have a series of eclipses that we will be engaging with, the first of which comes in the first 2 weeks of August. Okay, a south node eclipse, about 20 degrees of Leo. All right, that similar time frame, on the 27th, the sun makes an opposition to Pluto. It also trines Neptune, and it also sextiles Uranus. So the sun now is activating that basket formation. Sun-Pluto opposition, I mean, this is where the corruption becomes exposed through leadership. Like, so here's a couple of things to think about. Pluto is something that unearths things that have been hidden. And when we had Venus making the Pluto opposition this past week, we are unearthing some corruption in our relationships, our individual desires and relationships coming into conflict with the needs of the group. Okay. We have Jupiter making the opposition to Pluto, potentially being related to spirituality, could be related to clergy, religion, could be related to some things of that nature. Then when the sun moves into the opposition, then we have kings, leaders, presidents, anybody who is the head of a state coming into conflict, or the revelation of corruption. So this is something where we're really probably going to see some leader being exposed for the corrupt presence that they are, whoever that may be, in whatever country they may be. It's not exclusive to the United States, although there's plenty, in my opinion, there's plenty of that to be exposed. The trine with Neptune, again, part of the issue we're dealing with is the glamorization of violence, the glamorization of colonialism, and of exploitive annexation of land and property, or land and territory, I guess you could say. Those could be part of the corruption that are happening. And this is also activating the Uranus and Gemini question of like feeling like this communication, this desire to steal the fire of the gods and to gather data and information. All of that could be a part of the picture as well. So a really kind of pivotal point in the month that also is helping to build towards the Venus-Mars square. So here's Venus at getting closer to its maximum degree of fall, which is at 28 degrees Virgo. But this is Venus moving in through a decan that it's really very unhappy in. That decan, it's related to the 10 of Pentacles, but really the gist of Venus in this decan is oftentimes this brings things to their physical ends. Mercury here asks questions about legacy. It shows us the principles of entropy, right? Entropy being the ability, the scattering of atoms, the scattering of having something that's held together. Eventually, we all entropy, right? Eventually, we are a mass of atoms and systems and flesh and bone, etc. And eventually, we start to atrophy and we start to experience entropy, and the systems that are holding us together start to get loose, right? And this could be the problem of age, right? I think that something is going to be in our consciousness about old age. Like I'm thinking specifically of the president, like it's showing signs of decline, and like the challenge of trying to keep things together with Venus here in its fall. Oftentimes you'll see people like doing like plastic surgery or something that is trying to maintain youth and hold things together, but it ends up being some kind of grotesqueness, right? Like here's an example of this from my own personal life. When Venus was at its maximum degree of fall one year, I was getting antsy about my hairline thinning. And I made this, I've told this story before, but it bears worth repeating here. I made this oil that was made from like saw palmetto and turmeric. Like if you're not familiar with turmeric, it stains everything it touches yellow. And I put this on my head once and my hands were all yellow and I had to wear like a cap, and you were supposed to do this like every day. And I was like, screw this, man. I am not. This is going too far to try to prevent decay and entropy. I'm not going to stain everything, my clothes, my shower yellow every day, because I'm just not going to accept that my body is changing. And I think this could be an interesting point of trying to find acceptance of when we're trying to hold something together that is disintegrating, whether it is through age, whether it's through entropy, whether it's beauty related, okay? Like, and the Mars square says you can't have two things happening at once. You can't keep all the plates spinning. So there could be something where there's an overabundance of thinking that is making it very difficult to hold everything together. If we were to use the president as an example, just too many things cycling around in the spinning wheels of his mind, making it very difficult for him to have a coherent speech or thought. Like we've seen this increasing in the past few months, where he just can't hold his attention on one particular thing and goes off on these tangents, even more so than normal. And some of that could be just signs of his age showing. And I think that the combination of this square, in addition to an eclipse happening on his ascendant, I just think that there might be an acceleration of the signs of age coming for that individual in particular. And for just us as individuals, there could be something in our life where age is showing on something, and we need to work through the tension that is created through wanting to hold something together and then allowing something to return back to the earth. That brings us to the Jupiter Cazimi that's happening literally the same day. So this is a big day. The 29th is a big day. We've got this square between Venus and Mars. We've got the Jupiter Cazimi, and we have this full moon forming. Okay. So it's a full moon opposite the moon conjoining Pluto. Got this square happening. Okay. Jupiter Cazimi, that part of it is the rebirth of a new role, right? Some kind of new role, but it's in opposition to Pluto and the moon, right? So that new role that we're taking on could be uncomfortable. It might require us to step down from a throne of power. It might require us to do something that's in service of a collective to alleviate some of the corruption. It may be related to entropy. It might be related to the square between Venus and Mars, where we're really trying to keep something together, but all of these forces are leading to disintegration. Okay. So this full moon, okay, it's going to be hosted by Saturn, a retrograde Saturn in Aries, the taking back of something that was given, the taking back of maybe draconian laws, of royal decrees that were only serving one particular faction of society versus the collective. This is a place where we maybe have difficulty harmonizing with others too, because we're getting so fixated on form, but we're being shown that we have to let go of something to restore harmony. There's important seeds being planted on this full moon, though, with the Jupiter Cazimi. We're planting the seed for a new role, for a new way of being in our authenticity, maybe for new power structures. This could be the seed being planted for new power structures. I think that there's something really powerful coming at the end of July, beginning of August, with shifts in power and shifts in leadership. So keep your eyes out for that. We're going to be talking about this moving forward with some of our examinations of the full moon. We'll talk about the Jupiter Cazimi around that in much more depth as well. All right, friends. A couple things to keep in mind with August. New moon solar eclipse in Leo. Full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. So we have it in the third decan of Leo. Mid-August, we have a full moon lunar eclipse in the first decan of Pisces on Fomalhaut. So that's interesting. We'll talk about that. Venus will move into Libra. The Sun will move into Virgo. Mercury will move into Leo and then subsequently Virgo. Mars moves into Cancer in August. And then Mars and Pluto are out of bounds in August. So both of those, that's a little bit concerning with Mars out of bounds too, because that is the planet that's associated with violence, like acting out of character. But we'll see. And then we end the month of August. The end of the month comes with a Mercury Cazimi in Virgo, a very powerful moment in renewal for Mercury. Okay, that's what I've got for the astrology. Let's end our time here with an I-Ching and with an animal. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Appreciate you, friends. We'll get through it. Whatever comes, this too shall pass, and we will find a way. So the hexagram I have for you today is 45, gathering together. This is a beautiful symbolism, though. If you think about the number 45 and then you think about the number 33 in retreat, I'm just going to put it out there, 45, retreat. Interesting. Just infer for some of the things we were talking about. Gathering together. A hexagram is related to being able to bring people in some kind of new relationship of harmony with one another. Okay, it's also translates to joining others, assembling, having a common cause, holding yourself together, pitching in, cooperation between leaders and followers. The judgment says, gathering together, success. The king approaches his temple. It is beneficial to see a great person. Success. It is beneficial to persevere. Bringing a great offering means good fortune. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. Jack Balkin, in The Laws of Change, says, fostering unity takes skill and patience. In order to bring people together, whether a community, a charitable organization, or a business, you must give them a shared sense of purpose. You must give the group a direction. Hence, the text says it is beneficial to have somewhere to go. Common goals, shared symbols, and shared beliefs unite individuals and let them feel like they are working for something more than selfish interests or petty concerns. It is the duty of leaders to instill this sense of higher purpose. The text speaks of the king entering his temple. In ancient times, rulers would lead their people by making a sacrifice to their ancestors. This sacrifice reminded people that they had common origins and that together they were keeping faith with something noble and valuable. Calling upon common ancestors and invoking shared traditions was a powerful symbol of community, which constituted them as a single people with a common history and destiny. In the same way, if you're called to bring people together, you must instill in them a sense of shared history and purpose. You must give them something to believe in. You must bring a great offering, something that performs the same function as the offering to the ancestors that the ancient kings made. You must find symbols that people can rally around and express their joint commitment. Now, there's changing lines here, and these changing lines, a little bit challenging. In the third place, it says gathering together with sighs. There's nothing beneficial in this. To go forward is without blame, slight humiliation. It says, you would like to join a group, but it seems closed to you. Do not try to force your way in. People will resent. This is really speaking very strongly to the people in the in crowd, Leo, and the people on the fringe, Aquarius. The tension between those oppositions. It says, don't try to force your way in. People will resent your pushiness, and you will meet with a rebuff. Instead, seek out someone who is influential within the group. If you ally with them, you can introduce yourself or recommend you to others. They can introduce you or recommend you to others. Swallow your pride. South Node in Leo. Although there might be slight humiliation in proceeding this way, humility and patience constitute the best approach if you wish to join a group that is already formed without you. 6 at the top says, lamenting and sighing, floods of tears, no blame. He says, you have tried to join in and make a contribution, but your efforts so far have not been appreciated. Do not blame yourself. People have misunderstood you. Re-examine your position and try to understand why you have failed to communicate your true motives. Express your regret and your sense of hurt openly, but without rancor or accusation. Then people may change their opinions of you, and it may be possible to join with them after all. Okay. All right. That's changing. Okay. 2. That is changing. 2, retreat. Retreat. Strategic withdrawal. Living to fight another day. The judgment says retreat, success. In small things, it is beneficial to persevere. It says you face hostile conditions and therefore should make a strategic retreat. This is entirely appropriate under the circumstances and should not be confused with cowardice or resignation. You should withdraw when you are in the strongest position to do so, preserving your resources in order to fight another day. Honestly, friends, this is exactly the South Node, or the North Node in Aquarius 3. Retreat. Knowing when to say when, knowing when to persevere or preserve what you have left rather than fighting to the death on the hill. This is a perfect representation of this. An army that retreats only after it is defeated in battle has waited too long. As a result, it often suffers heavy casualties as it flees and must leave its arms and provisions on the field. In this case, by timing your withdrawal appropriately, you avoid losses and conserve your power. In this way, you can actually strengthen yourself and begin preparations for effective countermeasures. Indeed, by retreating in this way, you can actually make things more difficult for your opponent by limiting his options and means of attack. You can retreat to a position of strength with full power and resources still at your disposal. By making yourself less vulnerable to your adversary, you make your adversaries less powerful and less able to harm you. Applied outside the battlefield, the lesson of this hexagram is that a properly timed retreat from a situation that is not serving your best interests can be constructive and liberating. It can enhance your power rather than detracting from it. By withdrawing from the situation, you can free yourself from entanglements that sap your energies and from a negative personality who could drag you down. This gives you the chance to take a broader view and to rethink your priorities. Knowing when and how to retreat properly requires shrewdness, careful planning, and complete cool-headedness. Good timing is essential, but when your exit is properly prepared and performed, the results are entirely favorable. Hence, this hexagram predicts success. Okay. So, knowing when to say when, knowing when to call things quits, I think is really important, especially with the North Node in Aquarius 3 knowing when to step off the hill and stop defending a position that is only going to lead to more suffering for you or for others. Important. This is leading to, let's see, let me check in with the chat here. Ani says, back in Mercury is slowly rising to, bringing realization to what isn't happening resolved, right? Okay. Yeah, definitely seeing the combination of that with the Cazimi and the sextile to Venus, all sorts of interesting things in the Reformation. Yeah, lots of different powerful symbols of like something coming together that could have been painful, but then just getting freed from it, right? Knowing when to say when. Maybe we were getting close to a difficult situation and then saying, nah, I don't think this is right for us. We've got to live to fight another day, live to see another day. Ani says, you'll never escape. The only way out is through. Exactly. When you were trying to leave positions of pain, right? When we're trying to leave the world on some level too, sometimes we have to work through those issues. Bonnie says, hello, so good to see you live today. Nice to see you, Bonnie. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Bonnie says, this I-Ching feels like it's for me this weekend. Strategy, not weakness. Exactly. Sometimes just pulling back and observing while maybe not abandoning the situation completely, but knowing when to say when, knowing when to not necessarily to hold your ground in an argument, but to say, oh, let's agree to disagree and we'll go our way and we'll figure out something else. That's good advice for sure. Now, the animal that I have for you is the angelfish. Look at this beautiful fish. This is, I believe, an emperor angelfish. And I'm going to read to you from Melissa Alvarez's Animal Frequency, my well-worn copy of Animal Frequency that has been well loved over the years. Looks very similar to my copy of 36 Faces that I use all the time and well-worn and loved. Angelfish symbolizes living up to your fullest potential, connection to angelic realms, and transformation. Angelfish are triangular in shape and have flattened bodies, long fins, and a small mouth. Their triangular shape represents cycles of birth, life, and death. Angelfish's vibrant colors and striking patterns include the brightness of hopes and dreams. Remember we talked about thinking about what our hopes and dreams are at that Mercury Cazimi on Castor? It lives in warm, shallow water, which means you don't have to dig deep for the answers you seek. Everything you need is right in front of you. All you have to do is take a closer look. This fish has a talent for adaptability, awareness, beauty, a colorfulness, connection to angelic realms, defenses, emotionality, empathy, enlightenment, hypnotic, independent, inquisitive, intuition, joy, lightness, navigation, pairs, potential, prophetic dreams. It has challenges of being prone to parasites, being shallow and unfocused. So look out for the parasites in your life, right? When angelfish appears, it means you are embarking on an adventure of spiritual growth. Angels surround you, guiding and assisting you as you are awakened to your greater purpose. A new role, a Cazimi, a Jupiter Cazimi potentially. Angelfish means you will experience new intuitive abilities and the expansion of abilities you already use. If you are a lucid dreamer, you may discover that now your dreams are prophetic. If you're clairvoyant, you may have also developed clairaudience. Angelfish offers you protection from negativity while lighting your path with purity. Angelfish means that others may seek your guidance about spirituality and understanding their own gifts. You feel comfortable in your ability to guide and direct others. Angelfish is connected to emotions, so your empathic abilities will start to become clearer. In decision making, angelfish can show you your areas that you need to further investigate before you make a final decision. It allows you to see clearly in the darkest water. Angelfish offers assurance that whatever path you choose, it will be the right one for you at this time. This animal can assist you when you need to work one-on-one with someone. Angelfish often team up in pairs and can show you how to interact with another person to get the job done or accomplish a common goal. Remember we talked about Saturn retrograde could be about teaming up with somebody instead of feeling like we're bound to do things all on our own. It also means that you will be supportive of another during this time. If someone you know needs assistance, a shoulder to cry on, or simply to be guided in the right direction, angelfish gives you the dedication, lightness, and joy to guide them. Angelfish can also help you to get out of a funk if you've been feeling blue. Its bright and flashy colors are delightful and radiant. Its colorful nature will elevate your self-esteem and make you feel more independent and strong while allowing you to adapt to whatever you put you in the funky mood to start with. Angelfish teaches you to swim forward in bliss while transforming from within. I love it. All right, friends, that's what I've got for you. Look at this beautiful, colorful creature here. So many wonderful creatures on this planet. I love being able to just see all their beauty and glory, and hopefully we can come together as a community and protect this for future generations. All right. Bonnie says Angelfish is perfect for this timeline. I love it, and I agree. I hope it serves you well. I hope that information serves you well, Bonnie, and that you're having a great month of June and into July. Okay, friends, that's what I've got for you. Do me a huge favor. Go follow me over at social media at Spencer Michaud, wherever you have a social media account. Follow my partner, Tanya Andrews, at Third Coast Mojo. If you want to check out my daughter, she's at Sag Moon Magic. Go sign up for a reading at spencermichaud.com. Go support Tanya at Third Coast Mojo. Subscribe to the newsletter, please. That would be wonderful. I would love to be able to connect with you in that regard, and maybe be able to connect outside of the social media platforms that are controlled by the billionaire techs. Like, that's a great way to do so, is sign up for your favorite creators newsletter, so that if things change with those platforms, you can still stay connected. And do me a huge favor. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. One day at a time. Balance out the need to be visible with the need to blend in. Try to be the most authentic version of yourself, and do so in a way that uplifts others. Remember that the key with Leo is not domination and control. The key with Leo is you can be a great cheerleader. You could say, I love myself, and because I love myself, other people aren't a threat. Because I love myself, other people I could see the beauty in other people as well. And I think that that's really the true essence of some of these oppositions, is when you truly feel comfortable with the role that you're playing in the world, there's no need for competition. You can be great, and so can someone else. And I think that that's something to think about as we move forward. So be kind to yourself, love yourself, and that'll help you to uplift and love others as well. All right, friends, have a good one. Happy Juneteenth to you as well, Bonnie. Hope everyone's having a great and free experience, as free as we can be in these times, and appreciate all of you. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.